to perhaps what was perceived as Jeremy Corbyn, actually trying to position themselves as being sensible with the economy.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way they, I mean, Rachel Reeves made a reference to that during her speech. She said, not only are we trying to convince people that we can be competent with the economy, that she already feels that argument has been won, if you like. And I think what's really, really interesting with all of this is where this lands the government, because now for the first time you do actually genuinely have this big ideological divide between the opposition party and the government. There is no doubt about that. Voters will have genuinely a big choice between both of the major parties. I think the big thing for the government is the government obviously argue what's happened to sterling today, what we're seeing with the higher cost of borrowing, are jitters, that this is just the market, things will calm down, and that this is a genuine path to growth. I think even if that is the case, now lots of people think it's a gamble, Labour portrayed it today as a gamble, some economists think it is a big gamble, I think most people would say it is a gamble, but let's say it pays off. The question I think for the government is the runway long enough for the next election?
Well,
will people start to feel it before 2024? Because if they don't, the government generally is in a lot of trouble, and Labour want to take advantage of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Darren, thank you very much. Darren McCaffrey there, our political editor. There is loads to get stuck into today, actually. We're going to return very shortly in a second, actually, to what Rachel Reeves has said earlier. But just on a point that Darren was making about the length of time between now and the next general election, the length of the runway before voters basically have to go back and say whether or not Truss's government is working. Another key area, and I want your views on this, gbviews@gbnews.uk, is remarkably immigration. Has Truss already put her foot in it when it comes to immigration policy? In this push to go for growth, it looks as though she's going to keep the borders well and truly massively open. I know that will come as a massive shock to a lot of you. If the gamble on the economy doesn't work and we're still seeing increased levels of immigration into the United Kingdom, how will that make you feel? But just to recap another point that Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves made earlier today, the idea was that she wants British businesses to lead the way, as she promised that Labour will be a party of economic and fiscal stability. Well, joining me now is British businessman John Elliott, founder of EBAC, a company manufacturing white goods. Thank you very much. Now, can I just ask you, have you been absolutely pummeled over recent decades by the importation of cheap foreign goods? Do you think we need to back British more?
Absolutely. For 30 years, we've had the wrong policy. We go for growth instead of going for balancing the books. We should run the country like we run a household or a business. You've got to balance the books first rather than grow it. That's what we've got to do. We've got to make sure that our exports equal our imports, or don't import more than we export. And the way to do that is by manufacturing.
Okay, well, this is it. Can I just get you on that? Because how do we make sure that we get more manufacturing back here? I've heard a lot recently, as we all have, about us being too reliant on things like Russian oil and Russian gas, and if they decide to turn the taps off, then we're screwed. Well, I want to bring more manufacturing back here as well. I don't like being reliant on what's been going on in China, for example.
Absolutely. We make washing machines in the UK. We're the only washing machine manufacturer in the UK. And you can make things successfully here. But we've got to recognise that people working in factories are good people. We sort of degrade them if they don't work behind a desk or have some white-collar job. We need people. There's lots of people in the UK who want to work in factories, want to work on farms, work in shops. And those are legitimate jobs adding value.
Well, talk to me about that then, because do we have to import those people, John? A lot of people would say, right, well, we need to get people from all around the world, but can we not back British workers as well?
That's the same as, because money leaves the country. Migrants come here, they're hungrier than our workers, so therefore they take a lower pay, which distorts the market, and then they send money back home. So it's the same, we're losing money again. We've got to become self-sufficient. We've got to stop buying things that we can't afford. We don't have the money. We've got to balance our imports with our exports. We've got to balance the books. It's simple as that.
Why do you think that there is a perceived lack of confidence when it comes to backing British manufacturing? Is it simply just that it's a lot cheaper to do it abroad?
Of course, maybe it's cheaper abroad, but that doesn't matter either, you see. You've got to forget that. You've got to accept it. People in the UK will have higher wages and they pay higher costs. If we double wages tomorrow, it wouldn't change a thing. Costs would double as well. We've got to balance the books and accept that if you live in the UK, you get UK wages, and if you live in the UK, you pay UK prices. You can't cheat by buying it overseas. That's the only way we'll balance the books.
Okay, all right. I mean, there's a few different things to get stuck into here because some people seem to be insinuating that we don't have a good enough British workforce here already. People saying that maybe people either don't want to do certain types of jobs, can't be bothered to get off their backsides and do those jobs, and that's why we need to go out and get the world's great and the good. Some other people are saying, well, we're not just getting the world's great and the good, are we? We're getting people who are maybe willing to work for cheaper and more menial jobs.
Absolutely right. Look, speaking of the work UK can do it, but we've got to change the benefit system. Make it so they've got to, able-bodied people should be working. We've got to, as a country, produce more. We consume more than we produce. And that can't be right. So we've got to just produce more and pay British wages and pay British prices.
But can you sell it to our viewers and our listeners then, please, John? Tell us exactly where in the UK we should be introducing new businesses, new manufacturing businesses, and what they should be manufacturing.
Everywhere and everything. We've got to make clothing here. We're very good at making cars. We're good at manufacturing. But it needs people like we employ at EBAC who want to come to work, do a job, not have an A level in mathematics, and go home. And there's lots of those people. We keep them in school too long. Let them leave school sooner and start working, helping the economy, earning a living, and developing themselves.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you completely. I think we should put more faith in practical trades, frankly. There are far too many children and young adults at the moment trapped in classes that they'll never use at schools or colleges or whatever, when they actually could be out learning a practical trade at the age of 16, 17, even maybe a bit younger in mind. But what's the point of sending all these people to go to university to learn things like underwater basket weaving when they could go and learn bricklaying instead? I'm going to have to park it there. John Elliott, thank you very much, founder of EBAC. Sorry, John. Sorry, I've got to leave you. I think there's a slight delay anyway, but that was, of course, John there. Now, just hours before Rachel Reeves' speech here at the Labour conference, the news of the pound slumping against the dollar rocked the British economy. And if the pound stays low, analysts are predicting the Bank of England will once again raise interest rate. Well, let's get some expert analysis from a man who never plummets. No, it's GBNews' economics and business editor, and arguably the hardest working man today. It's Liam Halligan. Liam, how are you first and foremost?
Doing very well, thanks, Patrick.
You've managed to maintain the slicked approach that I saw at 9 a.m. this morning when you were here, so well done you. But how's the pound? Has that shot back to life as well?
The pound's actually fully recovered from where, so it's back to where it was this time yesterday. It was at about $1.08, $1.09, and it went down to $1.03, so that's $1.03, almost parity, almost £1 equals $1 on Asian markets, and now it's recovered. But it may be, Patrick, that the reason it's fully recovered is because the financial markets are expecting the Bank of England, possibly today, if not very soon, to implement an emergency interest rate rise. Now, the Bank of England's next Monetary Policy Committee meeting isn't till November, as it happens. There isn't one in October. They happen most months. So the next meeting isn't until the 3rd of November. It may be that the Bank of England has to support the pound by raising interest rates some more in order to attract money from around the world into sterling. But that's not a given. But it's speculation that may happen.
Yeah.
That's a big reason why the pound has recovered.
All right, okay. As always, Liam, I want you to break it down for plebs like me, okay? Why should I really care that the pound has been plummeting?
Because it's not just, you might go to Florida and go to Disney World with your kids if you're lucky enough to be able to afford it, so you get less pounds for your dollars. It's not that at all. Look, we import a lot of stuff in this country, and if the pound's weak, then those imports become more expensive, Patrick, and that injects inflation into the system. That jacks up the cost of living, not least the cost of oil.
Right.
Oil is priced in dollars. We import a lot of oil, so if that oil's more expensive, it takes more pounds to buy that dollar-denominated oil. The price of petrol and diesel will go up, and many other imports too. So this isn't just parlour games by, city boys and girls trading in pinstripe suits. They don't even trade in pinstripe suits anymore, but you get the drift. This is about trends that really impact ordinary families across the UK. And if this emergency interest rate rise comes, we could see interest rates for mortgages, all kinds of personal loans, company loans go up as well. I mean, there is a bit of panic in the market at the moment.
Yeah.
The weight of money in the market suggesting, rather than Bank of England having interest rates where they currently are at 2.25%, they went up by 0.5% on Thursday. We're talking, if you look at the way people are betting in the markets now, we're talking about 5 or even 6% interest rates, a massive increase by the middle of next year. So this really matters.
Okay, all right. Now, just last question before we inevitably invite you back every single hour for the rest
I won't
of
go far.
time. Yeah, no, but can I ask, have you seen much of Liverpool so far? Have you actually been around
I
the place?
actually know Liverpool quite well, and
Right.
I met a mate here in Liverpool. Liverpool's a great place for live music, and I'm big into live music. I play a lot of live music.
Right.
It's great to see places in Liverpool where there are still so many bands playing music. So I'm a huge fan of this city. It's a great city.
Indeed, fantastic stuff. Of course, I'm asking that because we are in Liverpool. If you're just joining us and wondering why I'm not trapped in a studio in London, we're at Labour Party conference here in Liverpool. There's loads to get stuck into for us as well. That's not conference related. We're having a big immigration debate. Is Liz Truss really going to keep these borders thrown wide open? Do we need it if we're going to go for growth? We're also going to be taking a look at what's going on with these Iranian protests, the latest, as well as Suella Braverman says that we need common sense policing. What does that really mean? Do you still have faith in our police force? And apparently, anyway, NASA are going to be firing something massive at an asteroid. Me being a child, that really piqued my interest. Things going bang in space. You love to see it. I'll see you in a tick.
Hello. Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Noticed a bit of a chill today. Tomorrow will be similar, a brisk breeze, bringing in a mixture of sunshine and showers, with some places seeing far more showers than others. Why the chill? Well, low pressure up to the north and the winds swinging around that and bringing down the cold air from the north. Also bringing with them plenty of showers, particularly if you're exposed to that northerly wind. So North Wales, north coast of Northern Ireland, northern Scotland, some at times grazing the east coast of England. Not too many getting to southernmost parts of England and Wales, but we could still see 1 or 2 here through the night. Most places across the Midlands, southern England staying dry and clear and pretty chilly. That breeze stopping temperatures falling too far. A pocket or two of frost is just about possible, but most of us staying just a few degrees above freezing. A chilly start then to Tuesday, but there will be some sunshine around. Lots of showers tomorrow across northwest England, feeding down through the Cheshire Gap at times into the Midlands. And we may just see 1 or 2 cropping up across East Anglia in the southeast later in the day. Thicker cloud for Cornwall and some outbreaks of rain here. And we'll see plenty of showers continuing over northern Scotland. Elsewhere, showers few and far between. Some sunny spells, but it isn't warm. The winds, though, just a touch lighter perhaps for most of us tomorrow compared to today, so maybe not feeling quite so cold. Certainly when the showers come along, though, temperatures will drop and there'll be more of those through the evening. A bit more in the way of rain coming into the southwest for a time during Tuesday evening too, before that tends to fizzle out. And then on Wednesday, a slight shift in where we're going to see most of the showers. I think we'll see more for eastern England on Wednesday and not so many for northwest England. Still the odd one for Pembrokeshire, Devon and Cornwall, and certainly some showers keeping going in northern Scotland. But the main area for wet weather on Wednesday will be for eastern parts of England. Sunny spells elsewhere, and again, feeling a little fresh in the wind with temperatures generally in the mid-teens.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio
and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Welcome back, everybody, to lovely Liverpool. Now, the Prime Minister is coming under pressure to impose a cap on net migration amid criticism of her proposals to relax border controls. Liz Truss wants to overhaul the visa system to address labour shortages, attract talent and improve economic growth as well. I've been asking the people right here at Labour Conference in Liverpool this afternoon what they thought about all of this. How should we fill our job vacancies? Let's find out what they said.
I think more immigration is a good thing for our country.
Complete open door?
Yeah, I think so. Well, I think people have got stuff to generate for the country. I think people are good for our country. I've personally been able to study abroad and things like that. I think it's a really good thing. It's able to learn from different people and opportunities to generate money into the economy.
Sure, but you think we're too soft on illegal immigration?
No, I think it's difficult to define what illegal immigration is. Actually, I think that people who are fleeing some of the worst war-torn countries, then we as a country have such a proud record of being able to open up and hope and offer hope and offer help to people. I think that rather than crack down on things, I think we have to be more open to people, more helpful to people, in the greatest traditions of our country, actually.
People coming in illegally are obviously slowing down the process for the legal immigrants who are going through the correct procedures. And so, yeah, I think it should be a bigger issue, and I've looked for among the fringe events, there's very little mention of it.
We need more people who are more qualified, technical people, we need them here.
High skilled?
Yeah, higher skilled people, we need skilled people.
So how do you feel about, at the minute, it's not really Labour's policy to target higher skilled immigration?
I think we have to, because there is a labour shortage here. We need at least 500,000 people to work our economy here.
Firstly, we need more migration, include skilled migration. I think basically we need an industrial strategy that encourages workers to come from every sector, for every sector economy. It's no longer just the care sector that's shortage, it's every sector. What
about unskilled, levels of unskilled migration, or dare I say illegal immigration as well? Does that concern you?
I think it's a deflection. I think the real issue is we've got a huge issue with not enough workers. We've got demographic change, we've got an ageing workforce. We need to support people to work longer, be healthier for longer, and we need to support migration.
OK, well, I'm joined now by Shadow Minister for Employment, who better, Alison McGovern. Alison, thank you very much for taking the time. I understand that you're on a mad media run at the minute, so cheers for fitting us in. Have we got a problem when it comes to unemployment in this country, do you think?
Well, actually, if you look at the statistics, unemployment technically is at a historic low. But we know that something's going wrong because businesses are crying out for staff, unemployment's low, but wages aren't rising. And actually what we've seen is inactivity really growing. Now, what does that mean? And if you dig into the data a bit, it's not that people think that they might not ever work again, but actually we've got rising people who are not well. And it's not just the pandemic. Even before that, we have growing problems with some of the issues in the NHS and our health system feeding through to employment.
So what do you mean? So you think that people are too ill to work? Too many people are too ill to work?
I'm not sure that it's they're too ill to work. I think that it's a combination of, maybe needing a hip or a knee being done, maybe having a mental health challenge, and the support not being there. And I think that this growth in inactivity is now causing a problem. But I think that there's lots that we can do about it. I think lots of businesses are focused on being more inclusive so that people with disabilities of all kinds feel welcome in the workplace. But I think that there's something that government can do as well, because I think, when I think about job centres that I know here in Merseyside or around the country, I think that the support that people are getting is not good enough anymore. It's not tailored to their needs enough. So we need to really reform what job centres do so that it meets the needs of both businesses and people who are looking for good and better jobs.
So essentially what you're saying, my takeaway from what you said there, is we haven't really got so much an unemployment crisis, it's more a quality of work crisis.
Yeah, that's a decent way of putting it, actually. So it's do you feel that there's a job that you're able to do alongside that takes into account your your health condition and other things, but also the other problem that we have is around caring responsibilities. So we know that we need a really good plan for social care, and that if we could help people not have so many responsibilities outside work, that would mean that they could do more in work.
Well, like so what are the responsibilities outside work, like having kids?
Well, and there's a whole generation of people in their 50s, for example, where inactivity has been growing a great deal. We need to know more about it, but I think that there's a lot of people who are sandwiched between helping their kids with their kids, so their grandparents, and also looking after older relatives.
Can I just ask?
So they're getting
can I just ask? Some people might say that's a basic human function. People since Neanderthal times have had children, their children have had children, and they've looked after their families. Why does the government need to get involved with that now?
Well, the government has been getting involved with childcare and care of older people for a very long time, because we can't expect people to do two jobs at the same time. And that's why I think modern NHS would help support social care so that we can look after older people in their own homes and have that good support for them, so that those people who are at the moment are getting squeezed by those caring responsibilities can take up good and better jobs, and that will help not just them to earn more, but it will also help our economy to grow.
One of the things that Liz Truss came out and said, which I think has proved massively controversial with the Tory base and potentially within her own cabinet as well, has been about maintaining not an open door immigration policy, but not too far off, continue to go for mass immigration to help grow our economy. Where does Labour stand on that then? Presumably that's almost like a Labour policy.
Well, we want an immigration policy that works for Britain, and I can't, obviously you wouldn't expect me to comment on disquiet within the Conservative Party. That is for them. I'm focused on making sure that for every person who at the moment is struggling to get promoted at work and to earn more, that there is help there for them, and that we reform the system. At the moment, the DWP spends a huge amount of money. Just let me finish.
Okay, quickly.
The DWP spends a huge amounts of money on schemes that we know haven't helped people into work. We've got to change that. Businesses are crying out for staff, and people want to be able to do more at work. So we need to focus on changing the things that the government can do to help them.
Okay, there's no argument whatsoever, a bit like what Kwasi Kwarteng might have been saying, that some people do just need to work harder.
I don't think, look, I'm not a Liz Truss person. I don't think that the British public are idlers. I think that's ridiculous that she, was in that book writing that. I think it's about the infrastructure, and whether that's public transport that helps you get to work or the childcare system that helps make sure that families can make the most of life. I think that's the kind of infrastructure government can provide to help people move on and move up in work.
All right, well, look, thank you very much. Appreciate you making the time for us. Good to have a chat. I could spoke to you all day about all of that then, but as Alison McGovern, MP, Shadow Minister for Employment, what did you make of that back at home? If you're listening on your radio, GB Views at gbnews.uk. After the break, we will be getting an update on this violent disorder outside the Iranian embassy. Apparently there's a bit of breaking on that. That's, of course, in London, so away from where we are now in Liverpool. It took place yesterday. Maybe it's been kicking off again today. From what we can gather, a number of police officers were injured. But first, it's time for your latest headlines. Better late than never, Paul.
Patrick Patrick, thank you. Good afternoon to you. I'm Polly Middlehurst in the GB newsroom, and our top story. The Shadow Chancellor has accused the government of putting the economy in danger. Rachel Reeves says the UK is facing a national emergency, with the pound now hitting a record low against the dollar after the Chancellor announced his plan to cut taxes. Addressing the Labour Party conference in Liverpool, Rachel Reeves outlined her priorities and criticised Friday's mini-budget, which she said helped high earners.
Sterling is down. That means higher prices as the costs of imports rise. The cost of government borrowing is up. That means more taxpayers' money will go into paying the interest on our government debt. The Chancellor and Prime Minister, meanwhile, resemble two desperate gamblers in a casino, chasing a losing run. But here's the thing. They're not gambling with their money. They're gambling with yours.
Well, in news away from politics, the case against an American woman accused of killing British teenager Harry Dunn will be heard for the first time since his death 3 years ago. Anne Sakoulas is charged with causing his death by dangerous driving following a collision outside a US military base in Northamptonshire. She left the country 19 days later, claiming diplomatic immunity. The case will be heard at Westminster Magistrates Court on Thursday. The South Yorkshire Mayor says he's angered by a decision to close Doncaster Sheffield Airport. Blaming high running costs, the owner, Peel Group, says it'll cease operations at the end of next month. But the Mayor, Oliver Coppard, criticised the company for turning down an offer of financial help, and he's now appealing to the group to reconsider their decision and says he'll seek government intervention if necessary. You're up to date on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. You're with GB News. Now back to Patrick in Liverpool. Quick snapshot of today's markets first, of course. The pound buying you $1.081 and 1.122 euros. The price of gold currently standing at £1,522 and 33 pence per ounce.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV.
On radio.
and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Yes, welcome back to Liverpool, everybody. Now we're about to hit a topic that's very good for our GB News viewers and also big here in Liverpool. It's law and order. Scotland Yard has warned that it will not tolerate a repeat of the violence outside the Iranian embassy in London yesterday, which left 5 police officers with serious injuries, including broken bones. Hundreds of demonstrators angered at the death of a young woman in Iran after she was arrested by the Met Police. The morality police, I should say. The Met Police would have had to have travelled a very long way to go and arrest her. They marched on the embassy in London, demanding an end to the regime in Tehran. With the likelihood of further protests, police say that they'll have additional resources on duty to deal with any violent disorder. But our Home and Security editor, Mark White, reports on this for us.
Over several hours and in multiple locations, police had to contend with serious violence. Much of the disorder was, according to Scotland Yard, clearly orchestrated. Groups of protesters set on confrontation. From a noisy and impassioned rally in Trafalgar Square, by the time they reached the Iranian embassy, their anger spilled over into violence, turning on the police lines time and again as they were prevented from reaching the embassy building. It was the death of a 22-year-old Iranian woman that sparked protests across Iran, which have now spread to several other countries around the globe. Masha Amini died in custody after being arrested by the morality police for failing to properly cover her hair. The protesters want to see an end to the Iranian regime, in power since the Islamic Revolution in 1979. Outside the Iranian embassy in London, a clean-up operation is underway to repair smashed windows and remove paint from the front of the building. London Mayor Sadiq Khan blamed a minority for hijacking a peaceful demonstration. Scotland Yard said it was examining CCTV, video and mobile phone footage to try to identify those responsible for the violence. The Metropolitan Police said it would always try to facilitate peaceful protest, but violence will not be tolerated. With the likelihood of more protests in the days ahead, police will have additional resources on duty to deal with any further outbreaks of disorder. Mark White, GB News.
Right, yes, well, this has been getting a lot of you very reactive on social media. GB News' Home and Security editor Mark White joins me now. Mark, thank you very much. Can I just put a question to you that a lot of people have been saying, really, which is why on earth is this really going on? We respect in this country the right to protest, but also the fact that this is almost like a foreign issue that's now exploding on our streets here.
Well, in terms of the right to protest, of course, it's fundamental to our democracy that you have the right to peaceful protest. The Metropolitan Police say they want to facilitate peaceful protest, but if that turns into violent protest, then clearly that is not something that can be tolerated. And this was serious violence. We had 5 police officers described as seriously injured, that were hospitalised, suffering injuries including broken bones. And they say that there was a level of orchestration of this violence as well, that there were those in the crowd who were clearly leading and pushing those forward to confront the police and to confront rival protesters, because there were some pro-regime protesters who clashed with these anti-regime protesters, as well as, of course, the police.
This has been a really, really tricky time for policing for quite a long time now. There was the Black Lives Matter movement. We've had what's been going on in Leicester, which you expertly reported on for us. And now this. Serious concerns about a fundamental lack of respect for our police force. Suella Braverman has called for more common sense policing. Isn't it difficult to know what to do? Because if you've got police officers receiving serious injuries, having bones broken, etc., one might argue that common sense would be to respond more physically towards a crowd, but presumably that could escalate the situation.
Well, I mean, the police will always seek to try to do their job, whatever the criticism of their policing on sort of wider issues is concerned. And as far as protests are concerned, the Metropolitan Police, probably the most experienced police force in the country. They deal with these types of protests, not all turning violent, of course not, but certainly with large-scale protests almost on a daily basis in the capital. But occasionally they do turn violent. And the difficulty, Patrick, with this protest is it was quite spontaneous in nature. It then headed up to the Iranian embassy, where they tried to get in to that embassy. There have been people saying, well, why are the police preventing them from getting to the embassy? Well, the police have no choice but to guard and protect that embassy and the people inside, because we as a country expect other nations around the world to protect the British embassy if it should ever come under attack from whoever in those particular countries. So, of course, the police have got to protect the embassy of Iran, whatever you think about that regime and its politics. And now they're warning that in the days ahead, when we're expecting more of these spontaneous protests, that if there are violent scenes like we witnessed yesterday, they will crack down hard. There will be reinforcements there and available to move in decisively to try to deal with those that are causing trouble.
Yeah, quite right too. Mark White, thank you very much, our Home and Security editor. Well, speaking of policing, Suella Braverman has sent an open letter to police chiefs in her first public interaction with them since being appointed as Home Secretary. I'll just read a little bit of it out to you. She said that common sense policing must take priority over diversity and inclusion initiatives, and that there is a perception that police spend too much time on symbolic gestures rather than actually fighting crime. I think we can all agree with that, can't we? I'm sick and tired of police draped in a rainbow flag doing the Macarena, where actually some old biddy has had a house broken into and it takes them 2 weeks to come round, for goodness sake. But the letter also sets out her key priorities for the police and her crime-cutting agenda. She wants drug-fueled crimes, vehicle theft, vandalism and graffiti to be treated more seriously. Now, just correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not sure graffiti should be top list of our priorities when we've got police officers with broken bones outside an Iranian embassy. Can I just say as well, actually, in the last couple of weeks, I don't know about you, but I've been frankly really wound up by seeing people on streets in Britain, largely with foreign flags, causing violence over issues that originated in different countries. Why on earth are we having to deal with this? But Ms Braverman also said that she's expecting to cut homicide, serious violence and neighbourhood crime by as much as 20%. And she's doing this by ensuring that forces have enough resources and manpower by delivering an extra 20,000 officers. A lot to get stuck into here, and I'm joined now by Donna Jones, the Conservative Police and Crime Commissioner for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, a big brief there, and Shabnam Chowdhury, former Detective Superintendent at the Metropolitan Police. Right, thank you very, very much. Donna, I will start with you. Are you as angry as I am that people, essentially, I don't want to call it foreign drama, but when you see battles between Hindus and Muslims on the streets of Leicester, for example, and then we've got an Iranian embassy siege, not that one, what's going on? Why are we having to put up with this?
Well, you know what, Patrick, when I saw the protests in Leicester last week, I predicted this. I said to colleagues in my office, it's a matter of time before this plays out in towns and cities across the country. And sadly, what we've seen with those protests in London yesterday, 5 police officers, as you said, being injured, wholly unacceptable. And I think that this is a growing social trend in this country where people are taking to the streets and taking direct action. I mean, that's a pretty big thing to do. Taking direct action, smashing up buildings, painting, spraying red paint on the Treasury, as you remember a couple of years ago during the summer of 2020 in between lockdowns. You know, it's just not acceptable. People can use their voice, they can make their point, whether that be a political one or otherwise, they can raise their cause. They don't have to commit crimes, assault and criminal damage in order to do that. It's completely unacceptable.
I agree, although in Patrick Christys' Britain, Donna, I would say if you glue yourself to something, you get left there and you don't get fed. But Shabnam, I'm going to bring you in. Shabnam Chowdhury, former Detective Superintendent at the Metropolitan Police. Something that Suella Braverman's alluded to, the police are spending too much time dealing with diversity and stuff with rainbow flags on them as opposed to tackling crime. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that's a very, very small amount of time where police officers are out engaging with the LGBT communities or communities that are marginalised. Let's not forget that you're talking about the LGBT communities who have lost trust and confidence. We had the Stephen Port murder where young victims, male victims, were fouled by policing. The issue here isn't about symbolic gestures. The issue here is about under-resourcing of policing. They're talking about an increase of 20,000 police officers, but let's not forget they made those cuts from 2010 onwards, so they're actually just playing catch-up. There's a serious issue around training, around experience, and particularly around the resourcing of communities. You mentioned earlier on about graffiti. These are the things that affect local communities. The Metropolitan Police, for example, are in special measures. They've failed to record something like more than 70,000 crimes, and that includes a significant number of antisocial behaviour, which are the crimes that you talk about, local graffiti.
OK, all right. Donna, can I just talk to you a little bit about police recruits? I read with some interest an article yesterday in a particular newspaper which said that West Midlands Police had tried to recruit a new batch of people. One of them had made that particular police force allow him to bring a giant snail into the office for comfort, and another recruit had a blanket over her head to help her with anxiety. This was allowed to continue, although I am now reliably informed that that snail-related police officer is no longer in post, and indeed, actually, as it happens, the snail has passed away. But do you think that we're too soft with our recruits?
Yeah, I think the problem we've got here, Patrick, is that we've recruited such a volume all in one go. And, you know, if recruitment is spread out over a couple of years, you can then pick the best in market from what you need. But when you're doing it, you know, all in one concentrated go, and there hadn't been any significant police recruitment for a good 5 or 6 years prior to that, unfortunately, you've got to take what you're given in a certain level. You talked about the Met earlier and the issues going on in the Met. The Met is one of the forces in the country that are really struggling to meet their share of the 20,000 National Police Uplift Programme. Now, in my force, our share of the 20,000 was 498 officers. I pledged 600 when I became Commissioner last year because I wanted to go above and beyond. I actually think we need to get to 1,000 for me to feel completely happy that the officers that we're sending out to 999 and to 101 calls have the capacity and capability and experience to deal with what they need. But the Met are struggling. West Mids are struggling. Some of those larger Labour-run, with Labour Police and Crime Commissioners, they're really struggling. I did think it was slightly ironic that Yvette Cooper, the Shadow Home Secretary, yesterday at the start of the Labour Party conference, was crowing about how they're going to recruit 13,000 more police officers. Now, listen, I think that's a great pledge if that's what she's saying, but in the Labour areas in this country, they're struggling to recruit those police officers. And of course, I do think perhaps some of the quality has struggled because of the volume of recruitment all in one go.
Well, I just think, police officers are expected at times maybe to even run towards gunfire. But if you can't sit through a work meeting without petting a giant snail for comfort, then God help us. But Shabnam, I'll bring you back in here. I'm massively concerned about what I'm seeing, an increased prevalence, really, of people taking the law into their own hands. We've had what's happened in the Hindu versus Muslim situation in small pockets of that community in Leicester. That apparently spread a bit to Birmingham. Now we're seeing things with the Iranian embassy as well. I'm concerned that police's time is going to be diverted towards stuff like that, but also people, just normal people in their communities over here, are going to be seeing this going on, getting fed up, and actually the police's inaction is what could end up stoking racial tensions, and then society essentially rips itself apart.
Look, regardless of the race or background or the gender of the people that are out there that are protesting, they have a fundamental right to protest. But I completely agree with what Donna has just said. The fact is, you can do it peacefully. To actually go out and inflict violence upon police officers who are there to do their job, to protect the public, to protect the embassies and to protect the general public, including those that are protesting, and to have to suffer significant number of injuries, including broken bones, is totally and utterly unacceptable. So, regardless of backgrounds of people, the fact is, if people want to protest peacefully, there are ways of being able to do that. To attack the police officers who are there to do their job is not acceptable in any way, shape or form.
But can I just very quickly, and I'll just stay with you on this, Shabnam, do you not think that the vast majority of the British public, if they saw a police officer getting attacked and they saw other police officers wading in with their batons and being a bit more heavy-handed, would absolutely agree with it? I certainly would, force with force.
Well, sorry, that's just totally not acceptable either. You can't just start, inflicting force upon force. Police officers are very carefully and very well trained in how to deal with these sort of situations. They deploy the appropriate tactics. They do have tasers, they have handcuffs, they have the law on their side in terms of legislation, and they can take which action is necessary. The fact is, if an officer is unnecessarily assaulting anybody, then effectively that will come back down on him or her, where they end up either being put through a disciplinary process. And I don't think the public do actually want to see police officers forcefully handling members of the public, because that's not what they're there for. That's just your opinion.
That, but I think they're sick and tired. I think they're sick and tired of people standing back, frankly, while it all kicks off. Donna, thank you very much. Donna Jones, Conservative Police and Crime Commissioner for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, and Shabnam Chowdhury as well, former Detective Superintendent at the Metropolitan Police. Right, I believe that we're going to actually leave earthly matters now. A little bit of light relief, I think. We've done a lot of stuff about money or lack of. We've done a lot of stuff about immigration. We've done a lot of stuff about law and disorder. Let's go to space. NASA is preparing to crash a probe into an asteroid to research how they can impact the direction of travel of the huge rocky formations which pose a danger to Earth. It's interesting, actually, because here at Labour Party conference in Liverpool, I think I've seen a few space cadets, but there we go. The demonstration is intentional and taking place 7 million miles away. It has been said that the rock is not currently on a path to hit our planet, which is a relief to us all, nor will the test accidentally send it in our direction, another massive relief. But how prepared should we be for a potentially earth-shattering event? Joining me now is Justin Jones, who is the director of UK Prepping Shop, which helps people prepare for the end of the world. Thank you very much for joining me. So, is business booming? The time that you turn on your phone and you see news about an asteroid, you go, yes, payday.
Yeah, it's been booming since, especially the invasion of Ukraine. That really was a trigger for a lot of people to start stocking up gas masks and freeze-dried food. That was going crazy, you know.
Okay, so actually, when people fear the end of the world, clearly you do rather well. The asteroid thing is the asteroid thing. It looks like we're only due to be hit by one of them something like every 25 million years, so we might miss the boat on that one, I'm afraid. But nuclear war seems a lot more likely. What kind of things do you sell to help people prepare for the inevitable nuclear holocaust?
Yeah, there's a lot of fear at the moment about the situation in Ukraine and what Russia's kind of talking about. So we sell a lot of gas masks. We sell chemical warfare suits, iodine tablets for radiation, stop radiation sickness. We sell a lot of freeze-dried food. So we've got a tin here, which lasts 25 years. That's kind of our best seller, is the freeze-dried food. Especially with all the cost of food going up and stuff. That's a bit of an insurance policy to buy freeze-dried meat now, you know.
I suppose it's a valuable service, and you're seeing an increase on it, really, are you? I mean, there's stuff in my fridge that's older than that, 25 years it lasts for, but what do people want, bunkers and things?
We don't really get into that. It's kind of an American kind of stuff, but no, more the basics: food, water filtration, freeze-dried food and stuff is the main sellers, really, you know. There's a lot of people thinking there's going to be a shortage on food.
There's going to be a shortage on food. Well, I'll tell you what you should do. If it ever looks like there's going to be a disaster and people like me are pumping that out there, stock up on loo roll, because if the coronavirus pandemic taught us anything, it's that people want bog roll and they think the world's going to end. But Justin, thank you very much. Massively appreciate having you on. Great to have you on the show. He's director of UK Prepping Shop. So if you are terrified that the end of the world is nigh, then go to UK Prepping Shop. He said that people think that food is going to be in a short supply. I once went into Iceland and saw that they sell a tin, and I'm not joking with you now, it's a can with a sandwich in it. I would rather die. Okay, we're going to be coming back to you very, very shortly. I'm Patrick Christys. This, of course, is GB News live from Liverpool at the Labour Party conference for the next 2 hours. Coming up, I'll be speaking to the president of the Communication Workers Union as I ask whether the strike action, which continues to disrupt the UK, is justified. Are strikes just annoying at this point? And as the far-right leader Giorgia Meloni claims victory in Italy's election, could we be seeing another risk to the very foundations of the European Union? I would argue that's not a risk. It's been a long time coming. Back in a moment.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV.
On radio.
and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Yes, welcome to Liverpool, where in case you're wondering, it is raining. It's 4 o'clock, I'm Patrick Christys, this is GB News Live, and I am at the Labour Party conference. Coming up this hour, reinstating higher tax for the rich and more than £8 billion worth of investment on green projects. Just some of these standout announcements made by Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves here today. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty of all of that. Her announcement comes, though, as Downing Street has signalled that it will push ahead with its massive package of tax cuts, even as the pound plunged to an all-time low against the US dollar. I think we're a little bit out of date there now because it does appear to have bounced back up, but we will have the latest with our business and economics editor Liam Halligan, who'll be able to give you the specifics on that. But also this hour, I am going to be having a chat with the General Secretary of the Communication Workers Union. Why, you may ask? Indeed, well, it's all about strikes, okay? Unrelenting strike action. Have people like you and I, the taxpayer, got all the money in the world to keep giving to people who want their salary to go up in line with inflation? Has your salary gone up in line with inflation? Mine certainly hasn't. Should everybody's? They are the union behind the Royal Mail strikes, which we will see more of this week. In fact, the Royal Mail have actually got a stall here, so we could presumably go over them. It's brilliant, isn't it? They managed to deliver a Royal Mail van to a stall here, but they couldn't take one to your house to deliver your nan's post. Anyway, workers' strike, of course, is a big, big issue. Liz Truss is reported to be prepared to increase immigration. That's right, your ears are not deceiving you. Liz Truss might increase immigration to fill job vacancies and boost economic growth, allowing more migrants to enter the UK. But is now the right time for a softening on immigration rules? They can't get much softer, can they? They're made out of putty. Anyway, but before all that, it's your latest news. I'll be back in a tick.
Patrick, thank you. Polly Middlehurst here in the GB newsroom. And your top story today, the Shadow Chancellor is accusing the government of putting the economy in danger. Rachel Reeves says the UK is facing a national emergency. That's after the pound hit a record low against the dollar as investors began reacting to the Chancellor's plan to cut taxes. Addressing the Labour Party conference, Miss Reeves outlined her priorities and criticised Friday's mini-budget, which she says helps high earners.
Sterling is down. That means higher prices as the costs of imports rise. The cost of government borrowing is up. That means more taxpayers' money will go into paying the interest on our government debt. The Chancellor and Prime Minister, meanwhile, resemble two desperate gamblers in a casino, chasing a losing run. But here's the thing. They're not gambling with their money. They're gambling with yours.
Well, the former England footballer Gary Neville, who's also at the Labour Party conference in Liverpool, says the Chancellor has failed to read the room.
I didn't support the tax cut that was given at the end of last week. I also didn't support the removal on cap for the bankers' bonuses. It was a shock, to be honest with you. I shouldn't be shocked anymore, but I have to say that it didn't feel like it was reading the room in this country, and people are desperately worrying over the winter about how they're going to heat their homes, how they're going to feed their families.
Well, reacting to Rachel Reeves' speech, the Shadow Levelling Up Secretary Lisa Nandy told GB News Labour will invest in the many, not the few.
The Tories think that you can grow the economy and build a country by the few, for the few. We think all people and all places have to contribute to the country's success, and all people should have a stake. That's why we're promising to invest to get good jobs, clean energy jobs, back into coastal and industrial towns so that we can get money back into people's pockets.
Well, defending the government's economic strategy, Work and Pensions Secretary Chloe Smith told GB News growing the economy will take time.
What you saw in the growth package from the Chancellor last Friday is a really bold and ambitious plan that is all about growth, and I think that's exactly right. And for me, in my particular role, what I'm most focused on is using all of those levers to help people into jobs, and that, I think, is what we all want to see.
Well, away from politics, and the case against an American woman accused of killing the British teenager Harry Dunn will be heard for the first time since his death 3 years ago. Anne Sakoulas is charged with causing his death by dangerous driving following a collision outside a US military base in Northamptonshire. It's alleged she was driving a car which hit his motorbike, but she left the country 19 days later, claiming diplomatic immunity. The case will be heard at Westminster Magistrates Court on Thursday. It's not clear whether Sakoulas needs to appear. The daughters of a woman who died after eating a wrap from the sandwich chain shop Pret a Manger say they want justice for their mother. Celia Marsh went into acute anaphylactic shock after eating a vegan wrap in December 2017. It was later found to have been contaminated with traces of milk protein. The 42-year-old's family say her death can't be in vain.
So I think we definitely just need to do justice by Mum, and I think the way to try and stay as positive as we can as a family, because we've been through such an awful lot these last 5 years, I think the way that we like to focus forward is to make change to help people in the future for this, prevent this ever happening to anybody else.
Well, as you've been hearing during Patrick's programme, at least 5 police officers were seriously injured and 12 people arrested following unrest near the Iranian embassy in London. Rival groups clashed at a protest calling for an end to the Islamic Republic of Iran last night. It was sparked by the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, who died in custody in Tehran after being arrested for not completely covering her hair.
There is a government that people has never wanted this government. So that's really important. It will change. The regime will be overthrown, but no revolution has happened overnight. I think the point is now that people are putting their life in danger and they're saying we had enough, this time we have to end it and finish it. And we never ever had this type of support around the world from an individual.
The South Yorkshire Mayor says he's angered by a decision to close Doncaster Sheffield Airport. Blaming high running costs, the owners, Peel Group, says they'll cease operations at the end of next month. But Mayor Oliver Coppard criticised the company for turning down an offer of financial support. He's appealing now to the group to reconsider and says he'll seek government intervention. That's it. You're up to date on GB News. More news as it happens. Now back to Patrick in Liverpool.
All right, thank you, lovely people. It's just about to go 9 minutes past 4 here in Liverpool, where I am at Labour Party conference, and calls to support striking workers received a standing ovation from Labour members right here at this Liverpool conference, as a bacon butty was offered to tempt Sir Keir Starmer to visit a picket line. I think it might take a bit more than that. Wasn't it a bacon sandwich that it did for Ed Miliband? Anyway, earlier this year, Labour leader Sir Keir was warned off frontbenchers from joining picket lines. He even sacked his shadow transport minister in July for giving unauthorised media interviews from an RMT demonstration. There are more rail strikes to come this autumn, by the way, so strap yourselves in, people. We're not done yet, but I've been finding out if there's much support for strike action here at the Labour Party conference. I think we can all guess the answer to this, but I thought I'd do it anyway. Here are the results.
Yeah, they are absolutely annoying, but there is an absolute need for them to happen. Okay. The only way workers are going to get represented properly is if they take their own voices, you then collectively take action and make change happen.
It's always going to be a provocative question with rail workers in particular, because yes, rail workers are, very much, the working class, but they serve other members of the working class.
I was going to say, they could stop you going to work.
Yeah, exactly. And so this, again, it's a provocative, emotional question for Labour.
If rail strikes massively had an impact on you personally getting to work every single day, would you lose support for various different reasons?
I'm in a fortunate position where I don't rely on the railways every day to get to work. Yeah, but again, it's where do you draw the line? How long is a piece of string? I think if it was becoming, say, at the moment, what we're averaging, 1 or 2 days strike a month at the moment, maybe more than that. I think if we're getting to the point where, gosh, it's becoming like a weekly thing or a fortnightly thing, I think then support would quite quickly drain away.
I think it's really inconvenient if you can't put food on the table for your family.
Yes, exactly. No, I'm fully supportive of the rail strikes. And yes, some people will be inconvenienced. That's the point of striking.
Yeah.
If there weren't some inconvenience, then there'd be no point to it. But like Kate says, I think, it's more inconvenient not to be able to afford to feed your family or to put the heating on.
Some people are saying, so what they want is in line with inflation. Inflation's massive. That will be obviously a massive taxpayer-funded pay rise. It's a lot of money for the taxpayer to pick up on top of everything else.
A lot of money to cut taxes for high earners, isn't there?
So you'd fund it by taxing the rich?
Yes.
I would reverse those cuts.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. A cross-section of society here at Labour Party conference. Well, joining me now is Karen Rose, the president of the Communication Workers Union, who are behind the Royal Mail strikes, I believe. Thank you very much for joining us. First and foremost, then, why are you striking?
Well, we're striking. Initially, it was about pay. Basically, Royal Mail have imposed a 2% pay rise on their employees, which quite clearly is a pay cut in real terms. Doesn't go anywhere near addressing the cost of living crisis, and that's basically what began the dispute.
Should public sector workers be immune from the cost of living crisis?
Public sector workers? Yeah. I think workers should be immune from the cost of living crisis. Look, where people can afford to pay, where companies can afford to pay, I think they should. And I quite clearly, in the case of Royal Mail and the case of BT, where we're also in dispute on behalf of our BT and Openreach workers, those companies can afford to pay. They can afford to pay more than they have offered the workers at the moment. So what's clear is that where people can afford to pay, where companies can afford to pay to mitigate the cost of living and to mitigate the cost of living crisis, they should.
Okay, all right. So basically what you're saying is that you think that any company that can afford to should pay, but isn't it a sliding scale in terms of what they can actually afford? Because doesn't that just completely stifle wealth creation and ambition, really? Why would you want to start up a company if you know that any time that times are hard, you're going to end up having to shove a load of cash at your workers?
But that's why I said, if they can afford it. And you see, in Royal Mail, and in the case of BT, those are two companies who can afford it. They have both made enormous profits, chosen to give bigger shares to the shareholders than they needed to, and they made that choice. It was a significant choice that they made, and then not rewarded the workers, who are actually the people who have created the profit.
Isn't Royal Mail stifling and affecting workers themselves? Because, workers rely on the Royal Mail, and then you lot decide that you're going to take a day off or a few days off, and packages don't get delivered and all this stuff, and it's working people who suffer.
Well, I don't know. Look, our workers, right, the people who are our members of the CWU, it's not an easy choice to make, to take strike action. As trade unions, it's a last resort. It's never the first thing we go to. We always want to negotiate. We're certainly open to negotiation at the moment in all of the disputes. It's the employers, actually, that are not talking to us at the moment. They're the ones that are not doing anything. They're not even opening talks in order to mitigate the strikes or to stop the strikes or to have discussion, consultation, negotiation. Ordinary people quite clearly rely on the services that the workers that we represent supply.
Are you not concerned that this might lead to increased importation of cheap foreign labour as opposed to the workforce they've already got? They go, look, this lot are continuing to go on strike, let's bring in some people who won't.
Well, you said cheap foreign labour, right? So I think we all know that there's a problem with labour supply in the UK at the moment.
There's not work.
There is a problem with labour supply in the UK at the moment, but I think that workers have to be able to make a stand at some point. That is what the members of the CWU are doing at the moment. They're making a stand. It is a last resort, but it is the only thing that they can now do, because everything else failed. And you see, these are people who are becoming quite fearful about what the future holds. These are people who are telling us, and our members are telling us. There was one young woman, for example, that I had an email from recently, who said to me, I do not know how I'm going to afford to put the fuel in the car to be able to get myself to work in order to earn the money to put food on the table and to heat my home. So these are people who are very, very concerned about what the future holds, because the predictions are, and we've seen the news about interest rates going up, people's mortgages going up, all of those things that I think ordinary working people in the UK right now are particularly fearful about. They are worried about what's going to happen, not just now in the next 3 months, but they're worried about what's going to happen in 6 months' time or even next year. They're getting really, really fearful about it. And the only way, and this government, of course, their answer to that is to give tax cuts that actually benefit the super rich, as far as I'm concerned, the uber rich, the people who actually could afford to get by and get through without any of those things.
Can I ask, because we're seeing strikes left, right and centre now, I quite literally can't move for strikes at the minute, right? A lot of people are saying, hang on a minute, this to me looks like a coordinated attempt to bring down a government. Is it really all about the workers?
I don't think it is a coordinated attempt. You see, what it is it is a common ground that workers are facing. So the reason why you're seeing it is because it's affecting all workers. So all workers are being affected by the cost of living crisis. People in Britain, I heard somebody speaking from the rostrum today, and they said Britain needs a pay rise. Yes, they do. Workers in Britain need a pay rise.
You know what I'm going to have to ask you now, don't you? How much do you earn?
How much do I earn?
Yeah.
Well, I actually work for BT.
All right.
So I'm actually employed. I'm not employed by the CWU. I'm actually a BT employee. So I earn Do you know what? I actually don't actually know what my salary is. I think it's around. I think it's around 40,000. Okay. But that is the job that I was employed to do when I worked for the company, and obviously that's the grade that I get paid of, and I still get paid by BT.
I understand that. I'm being a little bit cheeky asking you there, but I've got to ask. I will get hammered if I didn't ask. But no, thank you very, very much for your time. Really appreciate it, and hopefully see you again. Oh, and also, sorry, are you responsible? So we're at Liverpool, a conference centre here in Liverpool for Labour Party's conference. So they have different stalls around. Is it your stall that's got the Royal Mail van?
No. That's the Royal Mail.
I know, but I wondered whether or not you'd brought it with you because you're representing them. No. So where are your stalls dotted around?
Our stall is just around the corner here, and it's bright pink.
It's the bright pink stall. Okay. Have you got a favourite stall here? We were talking about the Falkland Island ones.
Well, CW is my favourite stall, obviously.
Apart from that, come on. What's your best freebie that you've had so far here?
I haven't had any freebies.
You've not had a freebie?
No.
I got a cake. Come off it. Anyway, there you go. All right. Thank you very, very much. Great to have you on. I've enjoyed that. That was Karen Rose there, who is president of the Communication Workers Union. What do you make of all of that? GBViews at gbnews.uk. This is, of course, GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I am at Labour Party conference here in Liverpool. Downing Street has signalled that it will push ahead with its massive package of tax cuts, even as the pound plunged to an all-time low against the US dollar amid hammered market confidence in the government's economic plans. I do understand, though, that since I've been on air, things might have changed a little bit, but earlier this afternoon here in Liverpool, the Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves gave an impassioned speech to delegates where she criticised the concept of trickle-down economics, saying it had been a failure in the past.
And in turn, that means the cost of borrowing for working people will now go up too, with higher mortgage repayments for families. And all for what? Not to invest in the industries of the future, not for our NHS, and not for our schools, but for tax cuts for the wealthiest. A return to trickle-down economics, an idea that has been tried, has been tested, and has failed.
Yes, welcome back, everybody. Right, well, I am Patrick Christys. This is GB News Live at Liverpool Party Conference. And GB News' political editor, Darren McCaffrey, joins me now. Darren,
good afternoon.
If my magic pop, there you go.
I'm always here.
You are.
On the sidelines, putting
the party into party conference. No, but, OK, right, so Rachel Reeves there discussing, I suppose, her alternative economic plan. Not a huge amount of policy, more about trying to come across as being more competent and trustworthy with people's money. Is that right?
Yeah, indeed. In fact, actually, at one stage, she drew on that. She said, I think, that the government has lost credibility, they're losing confidence, they're out of control, and that Labour was now the party of economic competence. And this is the kind of narrative where Labour have felt for a long time, this from their point of view, they felt for a long time, particularly in the Corbyn years, that economic competence with the general public was in the dumpsters, if you like, that they were just not felt as someone the public trusted to take over the finances of the country. They now feel, conversely, actually, what the last couple of weeks has proven is that they are the party of economic competence and that they can manage the public finances, spending and taxation much better than the Conservative Party. So they're pretty cock-a-hook, actually, in some ways here. I would suggest at Party Conference that there is a sense of confidence that I've not seen at Labour at a conference for a very long time.
It's really interesting. I actually walked past Jeremy Corbyn earlier and remember thinking how different conference was a couple of years ago, the different atmosphere, and look, Labour are at the minute ahead in the polls, and the Conservatives struggling a little bit. At the time that I came here today, the pound was absolutely falling off a cliff. And I wondered whether or not, Darren, this is the most confident Labour have been for a very long time.
I mean, certainly, yes. I mean, you talk to people here, there's a real sense that this is the Labour Party that maybe was 15 years ago when Blair was in power. Now, let's hold on a second. We always, first of all, the government would portray this as market jitters. In fact, actually, Kwasi Kwarteng, in the last couple of minutes, has said that there's going to be a medium-term fiscal plan, i.e. setting out kind of tax cuts and business plans and public spending on the 23rd of November. So that's going to come up. It's the 23rd of November, by the way. It's not going to happen anytime soon. A sense that the government do not want to portray any of this as panic, that they had expected these jitters and that things will even themselves out. Labour are 10 points ahead in the polls, but they are also 80 seats down. And even though people here might be very confident, they would need a bigger swing than Blair got in 97. They would need the biggest swing to get into government than we've seen in this country since 1945. So it is a massive uphill task. But has Labour got themselves into a position where they are genuinely credible and could credibly win the next election, or at least be the largest party? They have.
And it's really interesting as well, because before, one of the biggest things that a Labour leader had to overcome was the charisma of Boris Johnson. And, you know, with the best will in the world, Liz Truss is not necessarily the most charismatic of people, not a natural orator, one would say. So potentially, if that argument is out of the way, then maybe Keir Starmer can make hay. Darren, thank you very much. This will not be the last time I speak to you today. I don't think. You're not done just yet. Darren McCaffrey, our political editor, whizzing you through some of the very, very latest there. Yes, this is indeed GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys, and coming up, we'll bring you more from this Labour Party conference here in Liverpool. GB News' business and economics editor, Liam Halligan, is going to join me to talk about the run on the pound, but I've got loads more coming your way as well. We've got a big immigration debate. Realistically, will Liz Truss actually be able to, or want to, cut immigration levels? If she doesn't, what does that mean? Because if you vote Labour, you might as well basically get no difference, no weaker immigration, I should say, policy. That will mean a lot, one would have thought. But I will be back in just a couple of minutes. Don't you dare move.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland, Wales,
And Northern Ireland. On TV.
On radio.
and online. We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's
News channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Welcome back, everybody. It's a rip-roaring edition of GB News live from Liverpool. Now, not long ago, Rachel Reeves' speech here at Labour conference lit the place up for what that's worth, I suppose. At times here, I found it so quiet you could have fired a cannon over there and not hit anyone, but I'm reliably informed it's picked up a bit now. Anyway, the news of the pound slumping against the dollar sent shockwaves through the British economy, but since then, there's been some light at the end of this particular economic tunnel. The pound has since risen like Christ. But will this actually last? Or is this simply the calm before the storm, as rumours are rippling that the Bank of England governor will address an emergency interest rate hike later today? I'm joined by GB News' economics and business editor, Liam Halligan. Liam, basically the message is, can everyone just calm down?
Yeah, it was muck and bullets this morning when everybody woke up. The pound had slumped, had lost a lot overnight on Asian markets, fallen from about 108 to the dollar to 103. That's a huge percentage drop for a sort of major industrialized economy's currency. We're now back up above 108, where we were this time yesterday. So there is a sense that the currency markets have calmed down. Of course, there was turmoil because they'd reacted to the not so mini budget on Friday, lots of tax cuts and concerns that maybe the government was overspending without being really clear about how it was going to raise that money in extra taxation, given that it was slashing taxes. The danger now, Patrick, as you alluded to in your introduction, is that the only reason the markets have calmed down is because they're expecting a big interest rate rise to sort of compensate them for holding the pound. I'm not sure that's going to happen today. In fact, I'm not sure that's going to happen for a while, not unless there's another attack tomorrow. But let's be clear, as I've been discussing with you all day, this isn't arcane financial parlour games. This is really important stuff. If the pound really gets weak and plummets, we're going to get a big inflation spike. That means a big squeeze in the cost of living on top of what we've already had, because we import a lot of stuff here in the UK. And if the pound gets weak, all those imports instantly get more expensive.
Just talk to me a little bit about Rachel Reeves herself, because I think it's worthwhile noting about who she is, what her history is. Because, look, like a lot of politicians these days, your average Joe blogs on the street, you could show them a picture of a politician, they wouldn't know who they are. A lot of them are household names in their own homes, bless them. Who is she? What's she about? What's her credentials?
I'd say Rachel Reeves is going to become a lot better known in the next few weeks and months. So she is the shadow chancellor. She is basically Keir Starmer's right-hand person. She's the person that wants to take over from Kwasi Kwarteng if Labour win the next election. I've been following Rachel Reeves for many years. She's Leeds West MP. She works at the Bank of England as an economist. She's a particularly analytical person. And I'd say, Patrick, she passes what you might call the boardroom sniff test.
Gosh, I thought those days were gone in the city.
What do I mean by that? I mean that credible people from big business can look at Rachel Reeves and said, yeah, I'd trust her to run the economy. Yeah. And that can't be taken for granted, often with Labour shadow chancellors. Let's say John McDonnell, who was next to Jeremy Corbyn, he wouldn't pass the boardroom sniff test. Nice guy that he is. So I think Rachel Reeves is a credible person. She gave a speech today. She went big on, we are the party of financial and fiscal responsibility, and she's getting big claps from a Labour conference. That is a culture change. I think people here at the Labour conference in Liverpool, they can feel that maybe power might not be so far away. And we saw during the Blair years, in the run-up to 1997, that landslide victory, that when Labour gets close to power, that's when the message discipline starts coming in. That's when the left is kind of shelved and more modernising Labour politicians, Rachel Reeves among them, come to the fore, stressing to Middle England, to run-of-the-mill voters, you can trust us to look after the economy. We're not going to overspend.
It's really interesting, actually. Liam, thank you very, very much for that. Liam Halligan, our economics and business editor, cutting through a lot of the noise here. But it is worthwhile, everybody who's listening at home or wherever you are, or watching at home, watching online, you can't move for GB News these days, just to give you a bit of a sense of the mood on the ground. I mean, to be honest with you, I was expecting a little bit more chaos, people with bright pink hair laying off flares and calling each other comrade, and it's not been hugely like that. To be honest with you, it's quite a sensible mood here at the minute. I'm sure it kicks off a little bit as the night draws in and the beer doth flow, but at the moment, actually, it does really kind of feel like a quiet confidence here at Labour Party conference. Make of that what you will, but I've got loads coming your way after your latest headlines. Does the far-right leader Giorgia Meloni claim victory in Italy's election? In fact, she actually has done. Is she really far-right? We're going to take a look into this, but a bigger picture. Could we be seeing another risk to the very foundations of the European Union? I certainly hope so. But first, your latest headline news. Don't miss that though, because it's big stuff happening on the continent. It's not all go here in Liverpool. We're going to go global as well. Stay tuned.
Patrick, thank you. The latest headlines: the Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng will set out what's being called a medium-term fiscal plan on November the 23rd, and the Treasury has confirmed there'll be a budget in the spring. We'll also get a better idea of how the economy is faring, with the Office for Budget Responsibility set to update its forecast as well. Well, that announcement comes after the Shadow Chancellor accused the government of putting the economy in danger, saying the UK is in fact facing a national emergency. And that's after the pound hit a record low against the dollar as investors began reacting to the Chancellor's plan to cut taxes. Addressing the Labour Party conference in Liverpool, Rachel Reeves outlined her priorities and criticised Friday's mini-budget, which she said helped high earners.
Sterling is down. That means higher prices as the costs of imports rise. The cost of government borrowing is up. That means more taxpayers' money will go into paying the interest on our government debt. The Chancellor and Prime Minister, meanwhile, resemble two desperate gamblers in a casino, chasing a losing run. But here's the thing. They're not gambling with their money. They're gambling with yours.
Well, away from politics, the case against an American woman accused of killing the British teenager Harry Dunn will be heard for the first time since his death 3 years ago. Anne Sakoulas is charged with causing his death by dangerous driving following a collision outside a US military base in Northamptonshire. She left the country 19 days later, claiming diplomatic immunity. The case will be heard at Westminster Magistrates Court on Thursday. The South Yorkshire Mayor says he's angered by a decision to close Doncaster Sheffield Airport. Blaming high running costs, the owners say they'll cease operations at the end of next month. But Mayor Oliver Coppard criticised the company for turning down an offer of financial help, saying he'll appeal to the group to reconsider, and says he could seek government intervention. That's it. You're up to date on TV, online and on DAB Plus radio. You're with GB News. Don't go anywhere. Patrick's back in just a moment.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England,
Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV.
On radio.
and online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Yes, welcome back everybody. Your eyes are not deceiving you. GB News really did think it was a good idea to unleash me onto the streets of Liverpool for Labour Party conference. As we were discussing with Liam Halligan just a few moments ago, the British pound slumped to a record low against the US dollar earlier today after the government's tax-cutting fiscal statement last week. Well, there are now reports coming straight to us here at GB News that the Bank of England is set to make an emergency statement on the value of the pound today. Well, joining me outside the Bank of England is GB News' national reporter, Paul Hawkins. Paul, what's going on? We're hearing that there might be some kind of emergency announcement. Is that right?
Thank you.
Yeah, hi Patrick. Listen, the clouds are darkening over the Bank of England at the moment, and as well they might be because they have a really difficult decision to make. Now, we're not sure if they're going to raise interest rates. They haven't even said if they're going to make an announcement, but effectively all eyes are on the Bank of England because they're the only people that can do something at the moment to try and counteract the falling value of the pound. There are three things they can do. They can issue a statement saying, look, we're monitoring the situation, we're across it, and we're ready to act if necessary to raise interest rates earlier than they normally would be expected to do in November. The second alternative they could do is to dip into £100 billion worth of foreign currency reserves, effectively money that they stash away for a rainy day, and try to buy up the pound on international markets to try and prop up the value, because the basics of economics tell us that when demand rises, price rises. Now they could do that, but that would be a short-term option, bearing in mind that $100 billion by other companies' standards when it comes to those kind of funds is actually quite a small amount. The third thing they could do is to raise interest rates, which would give investors putting money into the UK more confidence, and also hopefully offset some of those extra inflationary pressures caused by Kwasi Kwarteng's mini-budget statement on Friday. The problem with that, though, with raising interest rates, is that that could be perceived as a vote of no confidence in the Chancellor's strategy and the government's fiscal policy. So, you know, difficult position for the Bank of England to be in, but they are the only ones that can act at the moment.
Paul Hawkins, thank you very, very much. GB News' national reporter there, Paul Hawkins. Someone may wonder why I'm holding a tiny cornetto full of ice cream, and that's because here at Liverpool for Labour's Party conference, we get given freebies, and a lady with ice cream walks up as Paul was talking, so I thought I'd take one, especially given the tone of the fact that Paul was saying that our economy might be knackered. I'll get whatever freebies I can. Well, Bank of England say they will not hesitate to change interest rates by as much as needed to get inflation under control. That was Governor Andrew Bailey. That's what he had to say. But we're going to move away now from the Bank of England, and we're going to talk about the EU. Yes. So Italy is set to have a Eurosceptic Prime Minister after Giorgia Meloni's Conservative Brothers of Italy party won the most votes in the country's election. Her right-wing alliance includes Salvini's League Party and former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi's Forza Italia party. They are due to secure a majority in both houses of Parliament. There's a bigger picture at play here, though, people. Okay, I'm sure you've all seen this in the news right now. Italy is the EU's third biggest economy, and so I'm asking whether or not the election result shows that the EU is crumbling. It does appear, though, that might have been a long time coming. I want to get to know Meloni a little bit better. Are we seeing a march of right-wing Euroscepticism, or should we say nationalism, but not in a kind of nasty nationalist way? More a kind of sovereignty kind of way, rippling across the continent. Should it be seen as a vote of confidence in Eurosceptics? I am joined now, I believe, from Rome itself. Yes, is geopolitical analyst Marco Vincenzino, whose name I've probably just butchered. Apologies for that, Marco. And from our studio back in London, it's Stephen Wolfe, which I did not butcher, former UKIP MEP. I will start, would be remiss of me not to go straight to Rome, as I especially eat a gelato here at Labour Party conference. Marco, talk to me about what's going on. Has your country really gone far right, or has it just gone Eurosceptic?
I just think there's a reaction to systemic politics. Italy, like many other Western countries, has a very fragmented political landscape. There's deep cynicism within the electorate. I mean, at the last election in 2018, the last national election, you had about 74% of eligible voters voting, and this time around it went down to 64%. So basically, the current situation, plus you have the whole fallout of the pandemic, economic fallout, the fallout from the war in Ukraine, and plus it's going to be a very difficult winter ahead. So and you've had basically ordinary people aside.
I think we might have just lost Marco. We've lost Marco a little bit there. Marco Polo, no, I won't make that joke. Stephen, over to you in our studios in London. Stephen, is this a sign that the EU is crumbling?
Unfortunately not, Patrick. What it is a sign is, as your previous speaker was saying, is that the people of Italy are growing tired of their own country's leaders and the way that they're reacting to issues that really matter to them. COVID, cost of living crisis, particularly the costs for people's budgets in their basket and their energy in Italy. We're also seeing a reaction to European immigration when we look at what's happening in the Swedish political forum and the recent election there of the Swedish Democrats. But one thing that holds all these political parties together and their people is that none of them really want to leave the European Union. And the European Union will not let them leave either. We saw when Tsipras was in charge of the Greek party Syriza during the real crisis in Greece, how the European Union and the elites within Europe managed to crush the political will of that party and got rid of them. Yeah. When another leader like Sebastian Kurz, who led the OVP party in Austria, also regarded as far right, really had Austria under his power, they did exactly the same to him, and he's left politics.
Just talk to me a bit about this, Stephen, because you've hit a key point for me there, which is that word far right, or those words far right, okay? Now, is our new friend and, I suppose, ally over there in Italy really far right? I've been listening to some of her speeches, and she talks a lot, for example, about wanting people to be proud of their national flag and want to wave it in Italy. She's spoken a lot about the fact that she wants people to be proud of the traditional family unit and to build back identity, both nationally, personally, domestically. That's not massively far right, is it? A lot of people might say that's common sense. Or has she got a streak to her as well?
No, absolutely not. And the use of the term far right, I mean, of course, I faced it when I was a member of the European Parliament and the immigration spokesman for UKIP. Of course, it's been used by the left to immediately try and destroy any political leader that goes against the will of the European elites. What is their main thing is they'll say it's immigration. That is therefore, as you're opposed to immigration, you are far right. But if you look at the policies of these political parties, the brothers in Italy and what was the Five Star Movement and the others that are all joining together, they're effectively social conservatives. They're about the sovereignty of the nation. They're about looking after the family. But they're also economically, generally, quite socialist. They're looking about giving money from the state to people. And that was the same with Marie Le Pen in her political party. So there's nothing far right about them. But they will use this label to try and persuade people that you should not be voting for them because they are frightened of some of their policies.
This is a key point though, Stephen, isn't it? Because actually, if economically they're relatively socialist, but actually, I suppose, it's a difficult thing to say, but socially you could argue that they're maybe quite conservative, right? Then actually that is a fundamental problem for the European Union, isn't it? Because if this lady draws a particularly strong red line in the sand, as do various other countries around Europe, specifically when it comes to immigration, for example, then the EU cannot have that. So what does the EU start doing? Does it start sanctioning Italy?
No, they won't sanction Italy. What they'll do cleverly in Italy, as they've always done, is they start to undermine the presidents and political leaders of the parties. They've been very clever, and that's why you see so many presidents fail in Italy. If you, someone gave me a number that there's almost something like 200 presidents since 1945. That may be exactly accurate, but we know there's an awful lot. So they'll work on that. But she does have an opportunity here to bring together a brand of political leaders in the Social Democrats in Sweden, to the Danish People Party in Denmark, to look at those in Poland and in Hungary, and bring together a coalition of people who can consider one really key issue that many people in Europe have been concerned about for years, and that is open borders. If she does that, she can really start building a very strong coalition that can start to change within the European Parliament and the European Commission particularly, policies that work for those people who've finally voted for these Eurosceptic, or what I call national sovereignty parties.
Well, that's the difference, isn't it? That's the key difference between people like the lady who's just been elected in Italy, for example, and then as well you've got people like the European Commission, because actually people did vote for Meloni, didn't they? And they didn't vote for the likes of Ursula von der Leyen, and that will always be a massively key issue. Stephen, thank you very, very much. Stephen Wolfe there, sitting in the seat that I normally sit in the studio in Paddington. I hope this isn't a coup, Stephen, but he was back in our London studio. And for a little while as well, we did have Marco Vicenzino, but unfortunately the signal from Italy was not particularly good. But as I mentioned a little earlier on, in the last 10 minutes, the Governor of the Bank of England has said that it will not hesitate to change interest rates by as much as needed. On a day the plummeting of the pound led to speculation there might be an emergency intervention by bank officials. Let's get an update now. Here he is, back again like an economic boomerang. It's our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan. Liam, there's an update.
The Bank of England's ruled out an emergency rate cut, at least for now, and the markets are holding up. The pound is holding up, about $1.07. What we've got, Patrick, is some coordinated comments from Kwasi Kwarteng's Treasury and the Bank of England. An awful lot of commentators have been trying to suggest there are loggerheads. One's got the foot on the brake, the other's got the foot on the accelerator. The Bank of England, while retaining its independence, is trying to convey it and the Treasury are working in a coordinated way. And the Bank of England governor said the MPC, that's the Monetary Policy Committee, the 9 economists who decide interest rates, the MPC will not hesitate to change interest rates by as much as needed to return inflation to the 2% target sustainably in the medium term. Of course, inflation at the moment is 9.9%. What the Bank of England is saying is we will not be scared to raise interest rates, trying to reassure financial markets, people holding the pound, that interest rates will go up, which will give them a better return on those holdings. This is to some extent an acknowledgement by the Bank of England that they should have raised rates more on Thursday.
Right.
The markets expected them to do a steeper rate rise than just 50 basis points, 0.5%. They expected 0.75%. At the same time, Kwasi Kwarteng's Treasury, obviously under a lot of pressure, they're trying to say, look, we think this is fine. They're saying that they will release some sums, basically, their medium-term financial strategy, explaining more about how the public finances will deal with these rate cuts, how they'll get more growth, with those new forecasts from the Office of Budget Responsibility. But guess what, Patrick?
What?
They're not going to release it next week or even next month.
No.
They're saying 23rd November. We're going to release on the 23rd November. We will update you. And that is, it's a pretty brave move. The Treasury is basically trying to say to the financial markets, you're overreacting, you're over-panicking, we think this is fine, the Governor of the Bank of England thinks it's fine, he will raise interest rates with the MPC if they need to, and they decide that's what they need to do. But as a government, we are unmoved, we are unapologetic, we are not releasing any more fiscal information, any more numbers about how the public finances will add up until the 23rd November. That's courageous.
He's got cojones, hasn't he?
It's basically saying, we are the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
Jog on.
You will buy our currency. Now, whether or not that will backfire, whether or not that will market participants will say, you know what, we're going to show the government who's boss. We're going to, what we say, short the pound. We're going to bet billions of dollars against the pound, making money if it falls. This is certainly a very concerted effort by the Bank of England and the government working together but independently to say the currency markets have overreacted. This has no grounds in reality. We still have one of the lowest levels of debt, which is true of any major economy in the world. We are still a dynamic, driven economy. These tax cuts are actually going to boost our economy, and you guys are going to want our currency even more. This is, this is basically a definition of doubling down.
Good stuff. I'd quite like to see it. Thank you very much, Liam. Back again. No doubt I'll be back again in about 5 minutes' time when they say something else. But there we go. Liam Halligan, our economics and business editor. Right, OK, just enough time to squeeze in something that, a little bit like the economy, affects a lot of you out there. That's driving, OK? I don't know about you, but yes, I've been slapped recently by numerous different driving fines, some of which I intend to pay, some I do not. But thousands of motorists have been slapped with speeding tickets after the Met Police has reduced its speed tolerance threshold by 1 mile per hour. Doesn't sound like a lot, but trust me, when the tickets come flooding in, it will seem like it. This change was not made public, classic, and has led to almost 350,000 extra drivers being caught out by the new rules. So the Met has said that drivers should not be factoring in thresholds when behind the wheel, and it remains illegal to exceed speed limits at all times. But that's absolute tosh, okay, because basically you do, because you know that there are little bits of excess speed limits, don't you? And so when that gets removed without telling you, all of a sudden, it starts to look like a shameless attempt to grab your money. Joining me now is Nick Freeman. Now, you may know this particular chap. He's a criminal lawyer. He's a keen interest in road safety. And put it this way, if you are ever in court, you'll probably want this guy defending you. Nick, are they just shamelessly trying to rip us off a bit here? I mean, I thought going 73 and a 70 or whatever, it's not the end of the world, is it? And now they're fining me.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't be done for doing, if you were doing 73 and a 70, you wouldn't be prosecuted. There's a tolerance zone which is designed to accommodate the fluctuations in the detection equipment, which varies between about 2 miles an hour up to 66 miles an hour. And over 66 miles an hour, it's actually 3%. So the police have given us a tolerance zone of 10% plus 1. So they won't prosecute you if you are travelling within that tolerance zone. It used to be 10% plus 2, but it was reduced several years ago. And that's why I'm quite surprised to hear a report that the Met have just reduced it, because the tolerance zone was reduced several years ago, but it's possibly the case that different police forces are exercising their discretion in a different way. So if you were doing 70 miles an hour, 10% plus 1 is 78 miles an hour, you'd be prosecuted at 79. If you're doing 30 miles an hour, you've got 33 miles an hour plus 1, 34, you'd be prosecuted at 35. So, look, you shouldn't break the speed limit, that is what the law demands, but provided you're in a tolerance zone, you're on safe ground, you will not be prosecuted. So that's the situation,
so you mean
and
to
it's
tell
been
me
like that for quite a while.
Yeah, you mean to tell me two things, Nick, that I could have got away with driving at 79 miles an hour my entire life so far, but now I'm just going to ask what I think everyone might be thinking. Just confirm, what is the absolute quickest that I can legally drive on the roads with this tolerance zone now? Because I've got to drive back from Liverpool to Manchester.
78 miles an hour.
Sweet.
On the motorway,
okay.
78 miles an hour.
Why have they brought?
But
why have they brought this in now?
Well, as I say, the tolerance zone has actually been in the ACPO guidelines, the Association of Chief Police Officers guidelines, for several years. And they did reduce it from 10% plus 2. And the difficulty is, I think most motorists are unaware of it. There's uncertainty. And there should be, they say there should be transparency. I suspect the vast majority of motorists do not know actually how fast they can go. They know what the speed limits are, but they don't know the level at which they're going to be prosecuted. And then, of course, when they exceed the speed limit, if they're convicted, they might have a course up to certain levels, fixed penalty, and then over a certain speed, it's a prosecution. So what really ought to happen is somebody needs to come out and say, look, this is what you're allowed to do. This is what we're prepared to tolerate. And then we all know where we are. In my view, the speed limits need to be increased in any event. They're too slow. On the motorway, 70 miles an hour is archaically slow in good driving conditions. It's ridiculous, and we need to follow what our European colleagues do in certain conditions.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. Nick, just quickly, sorry, before I get shouted at for you for having over too long. You had the nickname Mr. Loophole, was that right? Is it true? Have I got this right? Did you once get someone off because a police officer was chewing gum in the dock or something and he wasn't honest about it? There was a little story about that, wasn't there?
Yeah, well, he lost his credibility because he denied it. I then asked him what he was chewing. He said it was medicinal, and in fact, it was airways. So within about 20 seconds, his credibility was shot. So, yes, that is true.
Well, I'll tell you what, hopefully one day I'll be able to afford your fees, because presumably it's only a matter of time before I need them. Nick, thank you very much. Nick Freeman there, who is, of course, a criminal lawyer and has a keen interest in road safety, and I think we can all agree, crucially, getting people off. Anyway, there we go. Right, OK, stay with me, Patrick Christys, right here on GB News Live. I'm at the Labour Party conference right here in Liverpool. Well, last time I checked, it was still raining, but in the next hour, we'll bring you more on the Bank of England's governor saying that it will not hesitate to change interest rates by as much as needed. On a day, the plummeting of the pound prompted market speculation of an emergency intervention by bank officials. And away from Liverpool, on the blue side of the House of Commons, the new Prime Minister isn't backing British, it appears. Liz Truss is not backing British. She's going for foreign workers instead. Could this really be true? Is she really a Tory? Liz Truss is reported to be prepared to increase immigration to fill job vacancies and boost economic growth, allowing more migrants to enter the UK. Goodness gracious me, what's the world coming to? Hey, is now the time really for softening our immigration rules? Could they get any softer? I don't remember the last time we deported anyone. Back in a moment.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio, and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Yes, people, welcome back. It's just gone 5 o'clock. This is Patrick Christys with GB News Live, and I am live from the Labour Party conference here in Liverpool. All the L's. Well, coming up this hour, reaction to that statement from the Bank of England. They won't hesitate to change interest rates by as much as needed to bring inflation under control, according to Governor Andrew Bailey. The pound hit an all-time low, we can all relate to that, against the dollar earlier today after the government's tax-cutting fiscal statement last week. There's now fears, though, that interest rates could be raised significantly in an attempt to get inflation under control, reinstating higher tax for the rich and more than £8 billion worth of investments on green projects. Just some of the standout announcements made by the Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves earlier today. This is live here at Labour Party conference. We'll discuss Labour's plans for the economy with one of the party's senior MPs. That's right, the one and only Barry Gardner joins me. In fact, I can see him over there. He's going to be on in just a tick. Oh, he's just blown me a kiss. That's It's weird. Anyway, and should you ever mix politics and football? Former England and Manchester United defender Gary Neville seems to think so. He joined the Labour Party in January and is going to be in conversation with Keir Starmer in a few moments' time. We will bring you that live. But before that, it's your latest news. Chaos here at Labour Party conference. Chaos. Down, Barry.
Patrick, thank you. Well, on the Bank of England story, it's saying it won't hesitate to change interest rates by as much as needed to control inflation. The Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey has said the central bank is watching financial markets very closely following sharp moves in asset prices. This comes after the pound hit a record low against the dollar as investors began reacting to the Chancellor's latest plan to cut taxes. Well, Kwasi Kwarteng will set out a medium-term fiscal plan on November the 23rd. And as the Treasury has confirmed, there'll also be a budget in the spring. That announcement comes after the Shadow Chancellor accused the government of putting the economy in danger, saying the UK is in fact facing a national emergency. Addressing the Labour Party conference in Liverpool, Rachel Reeves outlined her priorities and criticised Friday's mini-budget, which she said helped high earners.
Sterling is down. That means higher prices as the costs of imports rise. The cost of government borrowing is up. That means more taxpayers' money will go into paying the interest on our government debt. The Chancellor and Prime Minister, meanwhile, resemble two desperate gamblers in a casino, chasing a losing run. But here's the thing. They're not gambling with their money. They're gambling with yours.
Well, as you've been hearing, the former England footballer Gary Neville, who's also at the Labour Party conference, says the Chancellor's failed to read the room.
I didn't support the tax cut that was given at the end of last week. I also didn't support the removal on cap for the bankers' bonuses. It was a shock, to be honest with you. I shouldn't be shocked anymore, but I have to say that it didn't feel like it was reading the room in this country, and people are desperately worrying over the winter about how they're going to heat their homes, how they're going to feed their families.
Well, after the Shadow Chancellor's speech, the Shadow Levelling Up Secretary, Lisa Nandy, told GB News Labour will invest in the many, not the few.
The Tories think that you can grow the economy and build a country by the few, for the few. We think all people and all places have to contribute to the country's success, and all people should have a stake. That's why we're promising to invest to get good jobs, clean energy jobs, back into coastal and industrial towns so that we can get money back into people's pockets.
Well, defending the government's economic strategy, Work and Pensions Secretary Chloe Smith told GB News growing the economy takes time.
What you saw in the growth package from the Chancellor last Friday is a really bold and ambitious plan that is all about growth, and I think that's exactly right. And for me, in my particular role, what I'm most focused on is using all of those levers to help people into jobs, and that, I think, is what we all want to see.
Well, in news away from politics, the case against an American woman accused of killing a British teenager, Harry Dunn, will be heard for the first time since his death 3 years ago. Anne Sakulas is charged with causing Harry's death by dangerous driving following a collision outside a US military base in Northamptonshire. It's alleged she was driving a car which hit his motorbike, but she left the country 19 days later, claiming diplomatic immunity. The case will be heard at Westminster Magistrates Court on Thursday. It's not clear whether she needs to appear. The daughters of a woman who died after eating a vegan wrap from the sandwich shop Pret a Manger say they want justice for their mother. Celia Marsh, who had a dairy allergy, went into acute anaphylactic shock after consuming the product in December 2017. It was later found to have been contaminated with traces of milk protein. The 42-year-old's family say her death can't be in vain.
So I think we definitely just need to do justice by mum. And I think the way to try and stay as positive as we can as a family, because we've been through such an awful lot these last 5 years, I think the way that we like to focus forward is to make change, to help people in the future for this, prevent this ever happening to anybody else.
At least 5 police officers were seriously injured and 12 people arrested following unrest near the Iranian embassy in London. Rival groups clashed at a protest calling for an end to the Islamic Republic of Iran last night. It was sparked by the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, who died in custody in Tehran after being arrested for not completely covering her hair. The South Yorkshire Mayor says he's angered by a decision to close Doncaster Sheffield Airport. Blaming high running costs, the owner, Peel Group, says it'll cease operations at the end of next month. But Mayor Oliver Coppard criticised the decision, saying the company had been offered financial help. He's appealing for the group to reconsider and says he'll consider government intervention. You're up to date on GB News. More news as it happens. Now back to Patrick at the Labour Party conference in Liverpool.
Loads for you to come here. I am live at Labour Party conference, going to be talking about immigration levels, whether or not it's really true that Liz Truss is going to throw our arms around the world yet again and do it in a bid to boost growth. We're also going to be talking about policing. We're going to be talking about the fact that it appears, anyway, yet again, that foreign issues are playing themselves out here on the streets of Britain. But before that, the Bank of England statement says that it will not hesitate to change interest rates by as much as needed. It comes after the pound plummeted earlier on today, leading to speculation there would be an emergency intervention by bank officials. Earlier on, very on brand, Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves said that Labour would be tasked with clearing up the Tories' mess. That would make a change. I believe we do not have a clip of her. There we go. OK, well, joining me from outside the Bank of England right now is GB News' national reporter, Paul Hawkins. Paul, what's going on?
Yeah, hi Patrick. Yeah, basically in the last half an hour, the Bank of England dropped this sort of 3 or 4 paragraph statement, and essentially they're saying they're not raising interest rates now, but in their own words, the MPC, that's the Monetary Policy Committee, they're the people who decide the level of interest rates at the Bank of England. They will not hesitate to change interest rates by as much as needed to return inflation to the 2% target sustainably in the medium term. So they had 3 options. They could issue a statement of reassurance, which is what they've done. They haven't gone for the other 2 options, which are to use foreign currency reserves that the bank does have to buy up the pound on the international markets to try and keep the price of, to try and prop up the value of the pound effectively, or they could have gone for raising interest rates, which they haven't done. Instead, they've gone for the reassurance statement issued to the markets to try and reassure them that not only can the bank deal with the situation, that it is monitoring the situation, but also that the Bank of England has confidence in the government's fiscal policy. Read this part of the statement as well. I welcome, this is the Governor of the Bank of England, I welcome the government's commitment to sustainable economic growth and to the role of the Office for Budget Responsibility in its assessment of prospects for the economy and public finances. Now, if it has raised interest rates, that could have been interpreted as a vote of no confidence in the mini budget that Kwasi Kwarteng announced on Friday. It hasn't done that, and instead as part of its reassurance to the market, as part of this statement reassuring the markets, it is also saying, look, we also have confidence in what the government is doing. So for now, the bank is holding steady, it's keeping its nerves, it's waiting to see what the markets do. I can tell you that the pound was worth $1.07 before the statement, it's now worth $1.06. It'll be interesting to see how the markets in Asia react when they open tomorrow morning.
Indeed, Paul Hawkins, thank you very, very much. It did sound in the background with those sirens. Someone was about to arrest him for services to good journalism, but there we go. Paul Hawkins, thank you very much, our national reporter outside the Bank of England. Well, I am joined now by a man who has been to, I'm reliably informed, more than 100 different party conferences, and it is important to say that there are several on any given year, okay? So he's not just 100 years old. It's Nigel Nelson, the political editor of the Sunday Mirror and the Sunday People. Nigel, how are you?
I'm all right.
Yes, good. You've been standing there for a little while. This is now, let's just say, your 100th party conference.
It's something like that, yeah. I've been doing them now for more than 30 years.
Right.
As you say, it's not just one a year, but
no.
And the novelty's worn off a bit now.
Has it?
So, yeah, a little bit, yeah.
This one especially dull, though, do you think?
This one's different.
Right.
This one's very different. What I was surprised about to see here were things like the national anthem, the Union Jack on the Labour set, no red roses, no red flags. This is a very different Labour Party, and certainly this year is marking a huge change in the way Labour is approaching things.
Yeah, really interesting. Let's talk about that. I'm done with the boring money stuff, right? So let's talk about that, because actually there's none of this almost like banter Labour side of it, where it used to have people in dungarees shouting for solidarity comrades and pink hair and all sorts of this. Okay, I've seen a couple of people with pink hair knocking about, but it does seem like more serious politics, less student stuff.
Yeah, I think that's true, actually. The one thing that Keir Starmer's been trying to do is make the whole thing more serious. So what you're talking about is really big policy. So it is things like his green agenda, the idea of making Britain carbon-free by 2030. That's a huge policy. You're talking about 500,000 to 700,000 jobs. So it may not be very sort of sexy in that sense. It's not the sort of thing that people talk about in the pub.
Oh.
Well, I mean,
the pound's more important.
The pound's more important. So then you've got sort of Rachel Reeves coming up and telling us how she's going to spend that 45p top tax rate when Labour put it back. I mean, that was the most bizarre budget since George Osborne put a tax on pasties. Only this one is more important. This is having a much more serious effect than just what's going to happen to Greggs.
One thing that I thought was absolutely fascinating, and the timing of this, I think, is potentially appalling, which is Liz Truss essentially coming out and saying that she's going to do absolutely nothing, it would appear, to cut the numbers of immigration. This is just legal immigration. She does want to continue it in order to help go for growth, as she would say. But immigration, whether or not they actually did anything about it, and many would argue the Tories didn't really do anything about it over the last 13 years, was at least a key fundamental point of difference between the two political parties. And if Liz Truss is almost just prostrating herself at the altar of mass immigration, well, there isn't that much difference between Labour and the Tories on that thing. It's just about the economy, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the economic divide is now huge. You're absolutely right. I'm not quite sure what Liz Truss is up to with immigration.
Yeah.
If she really wanted to actually deal with it, the kind of things you need to do is A, provide safe routes for people to get here, and also speed up the asylum process. Now, what she's talking about is plugging holes in the labour market by bringing migrants in. That's fine. I mean, you can do all that.
Skilled immigrant. That is almost an Australia-style point system, isn't it? We need a particular type of medical professional, or even a hairdresser, for example. Let's go after those people.
Yeah, and we do anyway. I mean, that actually happens anyway. But Liz Truss has got hung up on this idea of growth and how she'll do it. So her growth plan is basically lower taxes. She thinks with more spending, the economy will grow. And this is what I mean about big ideas coming out of Liverpool. Keir Starmer is saying, yeah, let's go for growth. We're on the same page when it comes to that. But let's do it by actually giving jobs to people in renewables and various green industries. That's the way to actually make Britain grow.
Yeah, indeed. It's going to be an interesting one, isn't it, going forward, I think, because it is, it's a big time here for the Labour Party. I mean, how well do you think they're doing just generally? Because 10 points clear or so in the polls. A quiet confidence around here, I must say.
Yeah, that's why I think it's so different, that Labour activists have got a real spring in their step, which they didn't have before, largely because they thought they weren't going to win elections. We're now in a situation where, with an election, 2 years away, could be sooner. I mean, they're on election alert now for next year. So the whole point is that they think they're onto a winner. It's a bit like the days of Tony Blair, where you knew who'd win.
However, Keir Starmer, so dull. Can he actually win an election?
Yes, I think he can.
Really?
I don't think he's as dull as everyone seems to say he is. I mean, I've spent time in his company. I was with him on Friday doing an interview. I find him great fun. Now, I know that's not shared by a lot of people, but what I think you've seen is the development of Keir Starmer. So year one, when he came here, it was all about changing the Labour Party.
Yes.
Removing the whole sort of Corbynite...
getting rid of the kids, basically.
Yeah, basically. Last year he was talking about himself. He was actually introducing himself. This year it's down to business.
Okay, good stuff. Nigel, thank you very, very much. Great to have you on the show as always. Nigel Nelson there, the political editor of the Sunday Mirror and Sunday People. Let's take a little listen, hopefully before we go to Barry Gardiner, by the way, which should be a fantastic interview. That nice to catch up with Barry Gardiner, a Labour grandee. But let's take a quick listen to more of what Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves had to say at party conference earlier, as she pledged to bring in a minimum wage which reflects the real cost of living. Come on, Barry.
Here's the truth. Wealth doesn't trickle from the top down. It comes from the bottom up and the middle out. From the talent and the efforts of tens of millions of ordinary people and from thousands of businesses. I'll tell you what a growing economy needs. Rising wages so that money flows back into vibrant high streets. Parents with the time to thrive at work and spend time with their children. Families with enough savings to weather a storm. And people feeling the confidence to take risks, to change career, to learn new skills or start a business. So, with Labour, there'll be no bonfire of workers' rights, as the Tories intend. As Angela Rayner announced, we will introduce a new deal for working people, with strengthened rights fit for the times we are in. And that's not all. On day one as Chancellor, I will write to the Low Pay Commission with a simple instruction, that the minimum wage will be set at a level that reflects the real cost of living. The last Labour government delivered Britain's first ever national minimum wage. The next Labour government will introduce a genuine living wage.
Right, there we go. Well, we've spent enough time bigging him up. Barry Gardiner, the Labour MP for Brent North, finally does now join me actually here. Barry, thank you very, very much. Great to have you.
You can never spend enough time bigging me up. You know, you keep doing it. It's wonderful.
Well, we'll see how we go, Barry, right? We'll see how we go. I'm after maybe a double act, and you double act, okay. And maybe we could be that thing. But so, Labour Party conference here now in Liverpool, which is a fabulous setup, actually, I must say. I never thought I'd actually say that. Different, I think, to previous ones. You were a member of Corbyn's shadow cabinet. How do you feel as though the current crop under Keir Starmer are performing?
Well, of course, I was also a government minister under Blair, and I served under Gordon, and I served under Ed. So, I've seen them all. How
are this lot doing?
They're doing very well at the moment. Thank you very much. I think we're just coming up there, waiting for that dam to burst.
But is this the point, right? Are we a Labour now, which, by the way, it's working for them, so you can't knock it because you've only got to look at the opinion polls and you've only got to look at some of the potential policies that Liz Truss might be about to roll out, certainly regarding immigration, which I think will be a shock to her own cabinet, right? And you think, well, what Labour are doing at the minute is working, but are they just trying to tentatively do nothing wrong, be a bit bland and beige, and hope that the Tories mess it up and that's how Labour come in? Where are the good old days? Where are the Barry Gardiners? Where's Gordon Brown getting locked into a cubicle over there somewhere? Come on, I missed this.
Well, look, if you look at the Green New Deal policy, okay, by 2030, that's major. That's you're talking serious amounts of jobs, okay? You're talking a huge boost into the economy. That's the sort of thing that people are going to look at and they're saying, actually, that would solve quite a few of my problems. It would solve my energy problems, right?
So how? Come on.
Well, because if you retrofit 19 million homes, if you make sure that they are properly insulated, the cheapest energy is the energy you don't use, right? So if you've insulated the homes, then that's saving people huge amounts of money. Now, it's also not too bad for the planet either, but that's great because people can see that it makes sense. It makes sense in terms of climate change, it makes sense in terms of their kids' future, and it makes sense in terms of their pocket because they're not spending the money that they would otherwise be, that's going into the pockets of who? Well, we know who. Shell, Esso, all the big oil and gas producers.
It's interesting that you brought them up, because that is, and I'm quite pleased as a journalist that there is more of an economic divide between the two parties now.
Can I just ask you, as a journalist, did you go on strike the other day?
Did I go on strike? No. Why should I have?
Well, there was the NUJ strike, and there was 79% of journalists voted for strike.
Yeah, I didn't. I didn't
go. You weren't part of that.
No. I actually quite enjoy working for a living, Barry.
Yeah, of course. But I thought you would be in solidarity with your fellow journalists.
Why would I be on solidarity with the Guardian? There you go.
Do you not like the Guardian?
No, they're all right. They've got some good people there.
There's some nice people there.
There are. Anyway, back to you. Talking of strikes, right. So, is this a bit of an issue for Labour? Because I think some people are concerned, whilst they have got sympathy for people who at the minute their wages are going up in line with inflation, etc., there's a concern that if you vote for Labour that they're going to be in the pockets of the unions. Is that going to happen?
Come on. No, look. This is... The point of this is, what are the unions about? Now, some people like to try and paint the unions as if they're wanting to bring down society, or they want to destroy good, profitable companies. Why would unions want to do that? They want companies to be profitable, but they want those companies, when they're profitable, to pay their workers properly. Now, at the moment, the reason we're seeing so many unions take ballots for strike action, your NUJ is one of them, the Journalist Union is one. I thought you were also thinking about becoming a lawyer.
Oh, I was for a bit, and then my journalism career, although it's hard to tell sometimes, picked up.
Okay, but you see, the lawyers, I mean, who would have ever thought that true. I didn't want to put it back into free fall. Okay,
it's all right. That ship has sailed, Barry.
But I was just thinking, if the journalists, if the barristers, if the nurses, if the teachers, if the civil servants are all saying we're not actually being treated fairly, we're seeing our living standards 3.5% lower than they were 12 years ago, and now we've got 11.5% inflation coming at us, and our mortgages are going up, and our energy's going up. No wonder they're saying, listen, we actually need this to survive. Now, that's not union barons. That's the British people. That workforce, teachers, nurses, doctors, lawyers, civil servants, that's the bulk of the British workforce.
People say
they're the voters, they're the electorate.
Some people say it's a suspiciously coordinated attempt, but there you go. Just very lastly, I've got to ask you this. Sorry, I know you've been standing there a while, which is lots of talk about bringing back British manufacturing.
Yes.
Do you think that we should bring back British? Are you happy for things still be made abroad?
No, look,
made in China?
I want to be making everything that we possibly can in this country. Because if we make it here, we use it here, that's jobs for British people, it's cheaper in terms of the supply chain costs, and it means we can export more. I used to be the Shadow Secretary for International Trade, for goodness sake.
Yes.
I was Minister in the Department of Trade and Industry.
Massive international links.
I believe in trade. Trade is a good thing, but it has to be done on a fair basis, and it has to be respectful of each country's particular situation. Now, the interesting thing is, of course, Liz Truss, she's just been over to New York, hasn't she, or to Washington?
Yes.
And what has she found? She's found that the big trade deal that was promised has been taken off the table. Off the table.
Whether or not Joe Biden knows it's off the table is another question, though, but there we go. I couldn't possibly comment, and neither will you, on that. Barry Gardner, I must say I always enjoy our little get-togethers, actually. Thank you very much, Barry Gardner. There. Right, yes, OK. I'm going to go live and here now. OK, live and here now from Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer, apparently, who is in conversation with former England footballer Gary Neville. Is this right? OK, there we go. Apparently this is happening now. Chaos at conference.
My mum was stopped playing in the 1970s for a school team.
Really?
Yeah. And my brother obviously was the manager of the England women's team for 4 years. My sister has fought for equal funding from Sport England for netball for many, many years. How can we be in 2020 still fighting for funding, for equal pay, for equal investment into women's sports? It's absolutely ridiculous.
Absolutely. Well, let's hope that's the legacy.
Just before we leave football, I want to just say that, and you'll have done this, Gary, I went to Anfield just 2 or 3 months ago to go and look at the memorial to the 96, now of course 97. And it was incredibly moving, an incredible reminder of what happened that day. And I think inevitably, just because our children are the age they are, our boy is 14, he comes to football with me. And every time I went down the list, it's in rows, and saw, because the age is on it, the age 14, my heart just stopped. It's such a powerful memorial. And that's why we've got to change the law. And we will change the law to make sure that that never happens again. There must be justice for the 97, and we will do that as soon as we get into government.
A really important point here in Liverpool this week. And so, talking of regulation in football, I know this is one of your favourite subjects as well, Gary. There's been some rumours this week that maybe now the government might backpedal on this idea of a statutory independent regulator in football. Tell us why it matters, and why you think that the Tories would be wrong to backpedal on that.
Well, they would be wrong. I mean, I'm surprised, I have to say, because I believe that it's a simple win for Liz Truss and her government. The last election, part of the Conservative manifesto, was that they would do a fan-led review. Tracy Crouch, a Conservative MP, has done a brilliant job with the panel in bringing that fan-led review forward with recommendations that I think are appropriate for the whole game. And it's got cross-party support. This isn't actually a Labour, Lib Dem, Conservative argument. Actually, everybody seems to be on the same page, because football clubs up and down the country are so important to the fabric of the communities around them. And I have to say, I'm unsure as to where those rumours emanated from last week. I don't know why you would even think to tinker with that, because the seats that are going to be fiercely contested in a couple of years in the general election, a lot of those towns that ultimately will be fought over have football clubs in them. And the EFL, the professional game, the semi-professional game, the supporters are all behind the implementation of a regulator. There is only the elite in the Premier League that aren't. It's a little bit of a representation of society. Vested interest and greed will try and control where the money goes. And the reality of it is, it shouldn't happen in society, and it shouldn't happen in football.
Well, Gary Neville there, half-decent right-back, terrible left-winger. Former Manchester United star Gary Neville, remarkably for the first time in his career, getting a rather big cheer in Liverpool. But let's speak to Aidan McGee, who is a sports broadcaster, friend of the channel as well. Aidan, great to have you on. I think just to the left of me there, you can actually see a little bit of Keir Starmer and his best mate Gaz talking away. What's it like for sports stars to get involved in politics? Does it end well? Because I've got flashbacks of Sol Campbell.
What, he's defending while he was an England player, or his politics?
No, I'm just wondering whether or not it's going to end well for Gary Neville getting involved in politics.
Well, if you look back through history, Patrick, the history of sports people getting involved in this country is very checkered indeed. If you look overseas and you see the example of Imran Khan, for example, who won the World Cup in cricket in 1992 before forming his own political party, and then becoming Prime Minister as recently. I mean, he was ousted in a no-confidence vote in April of this year, having served 4 years. So he was very, very successful. He was treated as a god in that country. In this country, the history of sports stars getting involved in politics is interesting, because you have Lord Coe, who you have to say had an excellent political career, but he didn't really go into politics using his sporting platform. In fact, his involvement in sport was very limited. I mean, apart from the London 2012 games, he was very much just a bog-standard backbench MP who I don't think had a major ministerial role in his time. I might be wrong on that. So that's an example there. In terms of football, I mean, yeah, you've seen Igor Stimac in Derby. He was a Derby County defender, Croatia international. He ran as a politician in his native Croatia. Romario, the former Brazilian forward, he's standing in office in Congress back in Brazil. So in terms of Gary Neville, I think he's right. I don't think he has to become a Labour MP in order to be effective. If you think back, 28 years ago, quite a well-known or quite memorable Labour Party conference in Brighton in 1994, we saw the then Newcastle manager Kevin Keegan doing keepy-uppies on the beach in Brighton alongside Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. That played out well with the public, but if you look at the history of that since, of that kind of thing since, nowadays it tends to annoy people when celebrities get involved. I felt that when we look back to the lovey era of Tony Blair back in about between sort of 95 to 97, before he won that election, the days of having Dee Ream playing in the background, things can only get better, and Liz Dawn, Chris Evans, Mick Hucknall, people like that, are sadly gone. But I do think at that time, by standing off and not being elected representatives, they were probably more effective for the Labour Party then than they would be today. I think nowadays it grates with the wrong people. But Gary Neville, he's a man of integrity. I worked with him on occasion at Sky. I don't think it's in his interest to become an MP. He said recently as well, it wasn't new when he said today that he wouldn't become a Labour MP. He's on record as saying that in the recent past. But, I don't think individual sports should fraternise with politics. We've got enough of that already. It doesn't end well. I don't really have a problem with individuals getting involved or individuals from the sporting world getting involved in politics, because the person who pays for it, ultimately, if they're not liked or not received well, is them as an individual.
Yeah, indeed. And it's a risky thing as well for somebody or anyone really, who's had such a long career in sport and in the spotlight and all over the world, etc., to suddenly get involved in politics, because then everything you've ever done becomes underneath the microscope, doesn't it? And anything that you've ever had in the past, whether or not you've had any misdemeanors, people come out of the woodwork, you just don't really need it in your life, I think. Aidan, thank you very much. Aidan McGee there, sports broadcaster extraordinaire, just discussing the fact that Gary Neville is, I believe, sitting in a room just next to me, talking to Keir Starmer and somebody else about politics. There we go. Gary, thank you very, very much. Well, there's been lots going on here, but there's more going on elsewhere as well, specifically regarding migrant workers. That's right. So we're talking a huge amount over the course of, well, frankly, forever, about immigration into the UK. Perhaps people thought that Liz Truss was going to get tougher on immigration, but it looks as though she might be going the other way, saying that she wants to apparently increase the number of migrant workers coming to the UK. How does that make you feel? Already opened up a little split in her cabinet, already opened up a split, apparently, with Suella Braverman as well, which could get a bit tasty, considering that she is Home Sec. I'll hear arguments for and against Liz Truss's plans to increase immigration as a way of filling job vacancies here in the UK. I want to hear directly from you on this. Do you think we need more immigration to fill job vacancies in the UK? GB Views at gbnews.uk. Don't be shy, but first, it's your latest headlines.
Patrick, thank you. Well, the headlines, the Bank of England says it will change interest rates by as much as needed to control inflation. The Bank of England says it's monitoring markets closely after the pound hit a new record low. Investors have been reacting to the Chancellor's plan to cut taxes. The Treasury has announced Kwasi Kwarteng will now set out a medium-term fiscal strategy on November the 23rd. Well, the Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves has accused the government of putting the economy in danger, saying the UK is facing a national emergency. Addressing the Labour Party conference, she outlined her priorities and criticised Friday's mini-budget, saying high earners benefit most.
Sterling is down. That means higher prices as the costs of imports rise. The cost of government borrowing is up. That means more taxpayers' money will go into paying the interest on our government debt. The Chancellor and Prime Minister, meanwhile, resemble two desperate gamblers in a casino, chasing a losing run. But here's the thing. They're not gambling with their money. They're gambling with yours.
The case against an American woman accused of killing the British teenager Harry Dunn will be heard for the first time since his death 3 years ago. Anne Sakulas is charged with causing his death by dangerous driving following a collision outside a US military base in Northamptonshire. She left the country 19 days later, claiming diplomatic immunity. The case will be heard at Westminster Magistrates Court on Thursday. And the South Yorkshire Mayor says he's angered by a decision to close Doncaster Sheffield Airport. Blaming high running costs, the owners say it'll cease operations at the end of next month. But Mayor Oliver Coppard criticised the company for turning down an offer of financial help. He's appealing to the group to reconsider and says he'll seek government intervention. Those are your headlines. You're up to date on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. You're with GB News, the People's Channel. A quick snapshot then for you of today's all-important markets. The pound will buy you $1.067 and 1.110 euros. And the price of gold currently stands at £1,531 and 97 pence an ounce.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
On radio,
and online. We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's
News channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
welcome back everybody to Labour Party conference here in Liverpool, and lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts on Gary Neville's appearance at the Labour Party conference. Thank you, by the way, for ignoring my Madonna-style microphone that I've been forced to wear throughout the course of this show, but there we go. Would Gary Neville put a cap on players' wages? That is from Keith. There we go. No, I imagine. Pat says, good name Pat, how dare he talk about bankers' bonuses, a retired footballer? Does he think we'll take him seriously? I guess he's looking to get into Parliament. What can you say? Well, I don't think he is looking to get into Parliament, because I suspect if you go into Parliament, well, he's on a lot less money than what he's on now. He'll be more hamstrung. And actually, it's a lot easier, isn't it, sitting there and sniping from the sidelines, something he would have been aware of later on in his career when he became mostly an unused substitute. Dan says, Gary is another millionaire who pretends to be a man of the people. I can't really figure it out, Dan, to be honest with you. I am, for the record, I'm going to whisper this quietly because I'm in Liverpool, a Manchester United fan, okay, but yeah, I've gone off Gary recently. Andy says, should we not also cap footballers' obscene pay? I mean, that's kind of the one. Can you have socialism and football in the same bracket? Gary Neville, is he falling into this champagne socialist trap, really, where you earn loads of money and then it's easy to become a lefty? Cause you don't have to go out and work. Liz Truss is facing pressure from her cabinet colleagues to impose a cap on net migration. We're moving on from Gary Neville now, amid criticism of her proposals to relax border border controls. Well, the Prime Minister wants to overhaul the visa system to address labour shortages, attract talent and improve economic growth. Several cabinet ministers, though, including Suella Braverman, the actual Home Secretary, and Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Business Secretary, are said to have significant concerns. And in fact, I suspect a lot of you at home do as well. Well, to discuss the Prime Minister's plans, I'm joined now by Robert Law, who manages 6,000 acres of arable sheep and beef farm in Hertfordshire, which is interesting, actually, because I'm looking at a model farm here from the NFU at Labour Party conference, so very on brand, and Alp Mehmet from Migration Watch as well. Good to see you, Alp. Right, I will start with you, Alp, if that's all right. Alp Mehmet from Migration Watch. So, just to recap for people, Liz Truss, a Conservative, I think people maybe had assumed would take a stronger stance on the rampant mass migration we've got, might actually want more immigration. Is this true? Can we even be any softer, Alp?
No, well, it seems that we can be. That's what Liz Truss is proposing. But the fact is that we're already really considerably looser than we were at the beginning of 2021, when the so-called points-based system, Australian-style points-based system that was going to solve all our problems, all our immigration woes were going to go. Well, what actually happened was that they loosened it to such an extent that a year to June this year, there were actually 1.1 million visas granted for people to come here and live. That's how loose it is. Well, Liz Truss is now proposing that it should be made even looser, and she's doing what Labour did in the early 2000s when Lord Mandelson said, we have to send out search parties, he said, looking for foreign workers. Well, this is what seems to be happening. I think it's totally absurd, and it's the last thing that would have expected a Conservative government to be doing.
Well, it's absolutely astonishing and bad timing as well, given the fact that I'm here at Labour Party conference. It's a bit of an open goal for Labour. You mentioned Peter Mandelson, Alp. I saw him earlier on, actually. He was walking around, which makes a change, because I did always think that he slept upside down in a cocoon. But there we go. I'm going to go over now to Robert Law, who manages 6,000 acres of arable sheep and beef in Hertfordshire. Thank you very much. So, have you got a problem employing people then? Do we need to import foreign people, or why can't we just get people from, I don't know, Liverpool, where I am now, to come and pick your fields?
Well, look, you heard last week that unemployment is at its lowest level since the 1970s. Now, that's rather unusual considering we're in such a time of economic gloom and all the problems we've got. But certainly in our industry and other industries I hear about, we are struggling to find labour. We're struggling to find seasonal helpers. A lot of people I know who grow fruit, who grow vegetables, they are not planting them at the moment because they don't know who's going to harvest them. We've got a chance to be...
Just quickly, sorry, just quickly, is that, and I can appreciate your answer to this, but I've got to ask it anyway, is that because you're not paying them enough?
It doesn't, paying them doesn't seem to be an issue. People don't seem to want to do the work here. We had the great Pick for Britain thing, which happened in COVID, and it didn't attract anyone at all. I mean, I'd certainly say at the moment, in 50 years of farming, we're having the greatest labour shortages we've ever had. And it's right through our industry, right through to the supply industry, getting people to process the vegetables, people working in slaughterhouses. There's not the staff there. And all we're doing at the moment is exporting our production at the moment.
OK, Alp Mehmet here from Migration Watch, bring you back in. I've got some shocking figures here, Alp. Our population's gone up by something like 11 million in the last 30 years, which is absolutely staggering. We've got, channel migrants costing us about £1.3 billion a year. I'm just reading some of this now. Net migration at around 240,000 a year. Illegal immigration, by definition, presumably impossible to quantify because we don't know all of the extent of it. More than million. It's unbelievable. I mean, if we now have a Prime Minister who actually wants to increase legal migration as well, I mean, we're in big trouble, aren't we?
Well, we are in big trouble. What I would say to Robert is, first of all, I have no problem with a scheme for bringing in people for a short time to do whatever's necessary seasonally and then leave. When I was an immigration officer 50 years ago, that's exactly what used to happen. You've got 40,000 who are now coming and came this year. Now, I gather this is going to increase, I don't know by how much, and they're going to be allowed to stay longer. So I don't think there's a huge problem there. Work shortages in work around Europe, frankly. HGV drivers, we're not alone in having a need for more HGV drivers. Pay them enough, pay them more, and you will have as many as you need.
Can't we fix this? Haven't we actually got the solution staring at us right in the face here now? We've got Robert Law, who has got 6,000 acres of arable sheep and beef that need looking after, and knows a load of people who unfortunately can't get the workers. We've got Alp Mehmet from Migration Watch, who talks a lot about people coming over here illegally and people coming over here illegally in dinghies. Can't we get the people who come over here illegally in dinghies in the channels to go and pick your fields, Rob?
Well, I certainly agree with what's being said. The seasonal agricultural worker scheme allows about 40,000 people through every year. We need about 80 to 90,000 to do it, to come and pick the fruit and do the processing. I'm totally in agreement about illegal immigration, but a properly managed scheme for people to come over, go into particular jobs for the season, but a more realistic figure at 80, 90,000 is just, what we need in the short term.
Rob,
okay, Alp, you said no, we couldn't get them to do that. Talk to me. Go on.
First of all, I do actually talk a great deal about immigration other than illegal immigration, Patrick. And the fact is that the major problem we have is the scale of immigration. You refer to population increase. Over 20 years, we had population increase of 8 million, 7 million of which was due to immigration, direct and indirect, children born to immigrants. Over the last 10 years, 3.5 million, 80% of it due to immigration. That's what is the problem. You need houses, you need schools, you need doctors, you need all sorts of people. That's where we've got to be serious about reducing immigration. And what the government is proposing now is absurd.
Okay, Alp, I'm being told to move on, but I'm not going to actually. Alp, just very, very quickly on this, please. A lot of people are struggling at the moment with potential demographic changes, highlighting things that are maybe taking place in Leicester and Birmingham, and dare I say outside the Iranian embassy as well. You're going to have to keep this very quickly, otherwise I think I am going to get fired. Would a trust like Liz Truss's migration plan to have more immigrants coming over potentially shatter Britain's demographics forever?
It can do. I think we need to reduce immigration. The scale of immigration is what needs to come down. And what Liz Truss is proposing now is the very opposite of what's needed. That's risky, to say the least.
All right, Rob Law, thank you very much. Robert Law, who manages 6,000 acres of land, sheep and beef, and Alp Mehmet as well from Migration Watch. Thank you very, very much. Right, so ministers are to review school guidelines on how to deal with gender identity after settling a court case with parents who had been accused of being transphobic. Get a load of this, people. This story might have missed you, but I'm telling you right now, you need to buckle up because it will shock you. Nigel and Sally Rowe brought a legal challenge against the Department for Education, claiming that their 6-year-old son was labelled transphobic, and indeed they were as well, by a Church of England primary school. So the Department of Education policies, which are under review, advise that schools create gender-neutral lavatories and allow pupils to wear clothes they feel are reflective of their gender identity rather than their biological sex. So the Department of Education has said that the review is not related to the Rose case. Just check this out now, because I'm joined by the parents who brought the legal challenge. It's Nigel and Sally Rowe. Thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Really appreciate your time. Just fill us in a little bit about what exactly happened. Why were you labelled transphobic?
Well, basically, we got a letter from the school when we challenged it, when another child identified at the age of 6 as being transgender. We got a letter from the school saying that we as parents of that child would be deemed transphobic if we didn't recognise that child was a literal boy or a literal girl. But worse still, in the letter said that my son, a 6-year-old son, would be labelled transphobic. And how many 6-year-olds can work that one out? Especially if a child, identifies as one gender one day and another gender another day. I mean, these days there's apparently lots of genders. It's very confusing. It's absolute nonsense. So we challenged it because it's ridiculous to do this to such young children at primary school.
So to clarify, a Church of England primary school was genuinely going to accuse your 6-year-old child of transphobia, just what, for not wanting to wear a dress?
Or not recognising the child as a literal, my son not recognising another child as literally a boy or a girl. It's just crazy. That it wasn't verbally said, but it was written in the letter from the school to us when we brought up an objection to the whole trans ideology that obviously, has been pushed in schools.
Yeah, and how does it make you feel? Because, I mean, it's an absolute shock, really. We're hearing loads of things as well. In fact, my next guest is Anna Sarwar, the Labour leader in Scotland, who I'm going to be going to shortly. But at the minute in Scotland, there's some rather fruity things going on, as far as I can tell, as well, about children being able to change their gender on the school register without parents being informed about it. And is this the removal of parental control?
It is indeed. I mean, it's completely mad and ludicrous. I mean, finally, I'm so overjoyed because the British government, well, in the UK, have realised this is absolute nonsense. Common sense has now come, because the trans ideology is a belief system that makes no sense. Firstly, scientifically, we know what do we have in we have male, we have female, we have XX, we have XY. Children do not have the cognitive capacity to work out whether they can change their gender at the age of 6. It's ridiculous. So the fact that what's going on in Scotland, I believe also it's the same in Wales. Sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
How could they expect? No, it's all right. Sorry, there's a slight delay. Apologies about this, everyone at home. But yeah, I mean, how could they teach a child, all that kind of stuff? I mean, they teach them, a certain. I'm oversimplifying it here before the trans lobby get at me, but they teach them a certain animal noise for a particular animal, don't they? And all of a sudden, you want to look at someone who looks like a boy and has been a boy for the first 5 years of their life, and expect the child to just not subconsciously know they become a girl the next day. I don't know. It's all a bit of a mess as far as I'm concerned, but thank you very much. I'm going to leave it there. Nigel and Sally, can I just say, just from me to you, would you mind just staying on the line with our producer, and we'll try and book you on again maybe tomorrow or the day after. It's just because we're pressed for time, and also I couldn't hear a word you were saying, so apologies about that. But we are now going to go on to another topic. By the way, the Department for Education spokesperson says we're working with the Equalities and Human Rights Commission to develop guidance to schools on transgender matters. Following feedback, yada, 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 basically say that they're all okay. Okay. I believe that now I actually have to read this. However, the department still found no grounds to intervene regarding the school's actions, and therefore our decision did not change to reflect the fact that we re-examined the complaint. The department agreed to pay a portion of the claimant's costs in order to settle the case out of court. The Department for Education also said that the guidance they are producing is not related to the Rose case. Right, it's fantastic stuff. Sounds remarkably similar to what I read earlier on, but there we go. If Labour were to get into government, one issue they would need to deal with is Nicola Sturgeon and her rising brand of Scottish nationalists who seem at all costs determined to break up the United Kingdom. Well, I am very pleased to say that I'm joined now in the flesh. I've been sitting here a little while actually by Anna Sarwar, the Labour leader up north of the border. How are you?
Good to speak to you.
Yes, good stuff. How are you gonna manage to topple Sturgeon?
Well, I'll tell you how. First, we need to challenge a lot of the divisive rhetoric and
I've been sitting listening to a bit of that divisive rhetoric for the last few minutes. I think we've got to challenge divisive rhetoric. Far too often now we've had politicians who want to entrench our country into camps, entrench our country into distrusting each other or disliking each other. And instead I think we have to give people hope in the face of this despair and demonstrate to people that we can build a different kind of country, both in the UK but also in Scotland. That's what we've seen people set out over the course of this conference, and that's what we want to do in the coming days as well, to set out that things don't have to be this way. We don't need the economic illiteracy, the moral bankruptcy that we have of the Conservative Party, trashing our economy, the day after day, week after week of chaos. We can choose something different. We are better as a country. Our people deserve better, and we can deliver that with a Labour government.
I mean, the Tories realistically in Scotland are on a hiding to nothing in a lot of it for various different reasons, historic reasons. So really, this should be Labour's turf, Labour's chance to really kick back at the SNP. I mean, you've had epic amounts of drug deaths there, a poor education system, the healthcare system has been called into question, and yet Labour haven't made massive inroads. Why not?
Well, a couple of things to separate. First thing is, in a UK general election context, the Tories have been a life jacket for the SNP because of all their chaos and the chronic failure. Every time Nicola Sturgeon does all those horrific things that you rightly highlight, she hides behind either pretending that independence would be the answer instead, or she says, at least I'm not as bad as that lot over there. I think Scotland should aspire to be better than just a wee bit better than Liz Truss or Boris Johnson's government. So we have got to demonstrate to people in Scotland that we're not tied to this Tory Britain forever. We're not tied to Liz Truss economics forever. We can offer something different. I think that psychological barrier that Labour can win again is really, really important.
Just quickly, where are you on independent Scotland?
I don't support independence. I don't support a referendum. I support Scotland being part of the United Kingdom, but that doesn't mean the United Kingdom doesn't need to change, and Labour has to offer that change. And once we do that in a general election context, of course we have to take on the SNP, because you're right, 700,000 Scots on an NHS waiting list, 20,000 young people waiting for mental health treatment, 20,000 businesses fewer since the start of the pandemic, record levels of drug deaths, and all Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP can do is either look for someone else to blame or something else to blame. Scotland frankly deserves better than that, and that's why Labour's in the fight and determined to win again.
All right, I really appreciate you making the time for us. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Short and sweet, but it was good though. I appreciate it. All right, okay. Well, look, thank you very, very much, everybody who's joined me for what has been, I loved it, a very chaotic show here at Labour Party conference in Liverpool. And Asawa, thank you very much. What a final guest that was to have on the show, the Labour leader up north of the border in Scotland there. Well, up next it's Jubes and Co with Bev Turner, who's in for Michelle Dewberry. Oh, Bev Turner joins me now. Bev, thank you very, very much. What have you got coming up?
Chaotic, Patrick? Surely not. Don't tell me it was a chaotic couple of hours. I don't believe you. I'm very jealous you're getting some Scouse hospitality there tonight. I'm here all this week while Michelle takes a little break. It's Bev and Co. I've got David Curtin. I've got Kevin Craig with me tonight. We've got all the stuff to get through, a lot about the economy, Labour versus Tory. We're doing immigration, and we're talking about the Italian Prime Minister. Is she really far right? What does that even mean anymore? We'll find out at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, good stuff. Thank you very much, Bev. Good luck to you. I'm sure you'll absolutely smash it. That's it from me here at Labour Party conference in Liverpool. I'll be here for day 2 for more of Labour's plans. But as we've heard, Bev Turner is up next. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Take it easy.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio and online. We're proud to be
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness, brilliant. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Hello, thank you very much for joining us this evening. You're stuck with me while Michelle takes a break. And what a week to be here. It's the Labour Party conference, which may not set your pants on fire, but it does mean that we are finally able to debate how the two main parties might differ after months of focusing on the Tories and Truss. It all kicked off today with Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves setting out their economic stall. We're going to pick that apart first tonight. Plus, Liz Truss wants more immigration to boost the economy, but many of her own team, and I suspect some of you, are against it. Let's find out what the new Prime Minister is talking about. And the first ever female Prime Minister in Italy, Giorgia Meloni, is being described by the global media as a far-right leader. But what does that even mean in 2022? And do my panel agree with that label? That's all coming up tonight, but first the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Bev, thank you. Our top story tonight on GB News. The Bank of England says it will change interest rates by as much as needed to control inflation. The Bank of England's also saying it's monitoring markets closely after the pound hit a record low today. Investors have been reacting to the Chancellor's plan to cut taxes. The Treasury has announced Kwasi Kwarteng will now set out